Chapter 499. Lu Ping did not immediately answer Li Xuanru's question. Instead, he asked, "Senior sister, how did you meet junior brother Yin?" At this time, Li Xuanru had already seen spiritual masters Xian Su, Xian Sen, and Xian Tong, as well as Xian Tian and the others. Knowing that they had already arrived at Jingzha Island, she hurriedly went up to greet the three spiritual masters. After exchanging a few words with Xian Tian and the others, she came to Lu Ping's side. At this time, Lu Ping was examining the restrictions on third senior sister Zhao Xuanji. Li Xuanru worriedly asked, "How is it? Are you confident?" Lu Ping shook his head. "The restrictions on the three senior sisters and junior brother Yin are different. I can't say for sure that I can undo them. I can only try my best. If it really doesn't work, I can only ask senior ancestor Tian Xiang." From beginning to end, the two did not look at Tian Qin Laozu, let alone ask her to undo the restrictions on them. They would rather ask Tian Xiang Laozu. Spiritual Master Xian Su and Spiritual Master Xian Tong could not say anything. They could only stand to the side awkwardly. Spiritual Master Xian Sen's expression changed. He sighed and cupped his hands towards Tian Qin Laozu. "Senior sister, it's enough to teach these juniors a lesson. There's no need to restrain them anymore." Lu Ping had invited Spiritual Master Xian Senator. If it was not for Lu Ping's Spirit Water Meridian Nourishing Pill, Spiritual Master Xian Sen would already be a cripple. Tian Qin Laozu also seemed to think highly of Spiritual Master Xian Senator. She sneered in the direction of Lu Ping and the others. "Pill Master Lu Jiu, Pill Master Lu Jiu. To think that I thought highly of him back then. So he is her disciple. Good, very good." Seeing that Tian Qin Laozu did not answer, Taoist Master Xian Sen could only helplessly watch as Lu Ping and Li Xuanru examined the restriction on Zhao Xuanji's body. However, he also looked at Yin Xianchu. In order to cover Yin Xuanchu's escape, Lu Ping did not hesitate to fight with Taoist Master Xian Shu. However, he did not know why Yin Xianchu was together with Li Xuanru and the others. Could it be that Tian Qin Laozu had already arranged this matter? While Taoist Master Xian Sen was letting his imagination run wild, Lu Ping's expression was grave as he formed 6 seals in a row. 6 blue light tendrils extended around Lu Ping's palm. Lu Ping's divine sense seemed to be trying to capture something. Suddenly, a green light shone from Lu Ping's eyes. The 6 light tendrils suddenly touched 6 different parts of Zhao Xuanji's body at the same time. Then, they quickly retracted. 6 green light needles were pulled out from Zhao Xuanji's body by the 6 blue light tendrils. Zhao Xuanji suddenly let out a breath. When she opened her eyes, she saw Li Xuanru and Lu Ping standing in front of her. Like Taoist Master Li Xuanru, she asked in surprise, "Ninth junior brother, why are you here?" Taoist Master Xian Tong saw that Lu Ping had consecutively removed the restriction on the two people's bodies. It must be known that this was a seal personally placed by Tian Qin Laozu. Although Tian Qin Laozu would not be too heavy-handed, this was still a restriction placed by Dharma Laozu. How could it be removed so easily? However, it just so happened that Lu Ping was able to remove it. Taoist Master Xian Tong could not help but murmur, "Amazing, amazing." However, he immediately felt a cold gaze piercing his body. Taoist Master Xian Tong involuntarily shrunk his body and flatteringly looked at Tian Qin Laozu with a mischievous chuckle. He then stopped speaking. At this time, Li Xuanru and Zhao Xuanji were both with Lu Ping examining the restriction on Wang Xuanjing's body. After a moment, Li Xuanru saw Lu Ping frown and couldn't help but ask, "Ninth junior brother, are you confident?" Lu Ping hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. "I do have a method, but it is quite difficult. This time, I will need the 2 senior sisters' help." When Taoist Master Xian Tian saw that Lu Ping had taken away his 3 senior sisters, he wanted to step forward to help. However, Taoist Master Xian Hui held his hand tightly as he looked at Tian Qin Laozu. Taoist Master Xian Tian knew that Taoist Master Xian Hui was nervous and sighed in his heart. He didn't step forward to help and instead stayed by Taoist Master Xian Hui's side. At this moment, Tianqin Laozu's gaze turned to the side and saw Taoist Master Xian Hui, who was on the verge of tears. For no reason, he felt anger in his heart and then softened. He sneered, "Xian Hui, Xian Tian, do you want me, your teacher, to recognize you again?" Taoist Master Xian Hui was overjoyed, and the boulder in Taoist Master Xian Tian's heart also fell. The two hurriedly bowed to Taoist Master Xian Hui. Taoist Master Xian Hui could no longer hold back his tears. Tianqin Laozu could tell that Taoist Master Xian Hui had not given birth. He glanced at Taoist Master Xian Tian and coldly said, "It's been 60 years and you still haven't given birth to a child. You really are useless." Taoist Master Xian Tian's face darkened and then he smiled bitterly. This was simply unreasonable, but he didn't dare to say anything for fear of offending this temperamental martial uncle again. When Zhu Xianmeng, Xian Yan, and Xian Shu saw Taoist Master Xian Hui again, they cried tears of joy. They hadn't seen each other for decades, and the hatred they had for Taoist Master Xian Hui for not choosing to leave with Tianqin Laozu had long disappeared with Tianqin Laozu's return to Jinling. Zhu Xianmeng also introduced Tianqin Laozu's new disciples, Chu Ting and Li Xiuzhu, to Taoist Master Xian Hui. When Taoist Master Xian Hui heard that Chu Ting had inherited Taoist Master's alchemy skills and had become an alchemy grandmaster, Taoist Master Xian Hui was overjoyed. "I didn't expect fifth junior sister to have such achievements. Now, our sect not only has Taoist Master Xian Hui, but also 7 alchemy grandmasters. In this way, our sect's Pill Pavilion's strength will surpass Xian Ling's sect's." Chu Ting was the most talented among Tianqin Laozu's disciples, and she was also the most valued by Tianqin Laozu. She was also a proud and arrogant person. As soon as she entered the core forging stage, she became one of the 24 pavilion masters in the boudoir. She took care of all the affairs on behalf of her master and handled all kinds of relationships appropriately. Originally, when Tianqin Laozu insisted on returning to Jinling, Chu Ting was still a little conflicted, but in the end, she decided to follow her master back to the North Sea. However, in her heart, there was still a trace of pride in her future fellow disciples. What kind of talent could the barren North Sea cultivate? However, the moment Chu Ting saw that Lu Ping was also a disciple of Jinling, the trace of pride in her heart was finally shattered. Not to mention the fact that Lu Ping defeated the 5 of them in an instant as soon as they met. Even when Lu Ping disguised himself as Lu Ping and traveled the East Sea, Chu Ting had never taken advantage of Lu Ping. Now that she knew that he was a disciple of Jinling in the North Sea, she realized that Lu Ping's power in the East Sea had other intentions. However, now that Lu Ping had suddenly become her fellow disciple, and she was no longer the pavilion master of the boudoir, Chu Ting's ability to spy on Lu Ping's plans became worthless. The sense of accomplishment naturally disappeared, and instead, there was only admiration in her heart. At this moment, they heard a light shout from Lu Ping, attracting everyone's attention. Lyra Laozu's eyes revealed a trace of pride. "This restriction is not something you can break just because you want to." They saw Lu Ping standing behind Wang Xianjing, while Li Xuanru and Zhao Xuanji both stood in front of Wang Xianjing. The 3 of them reached out their hands at the same time. Different from the blue true essence that Lu Ping emitted, the true essence that Li Xuanru and Zhao Xuanji emitted was like a sparkling lake. Lu Ping knew that this was a characteristic of cultivating the sea wave listening method. In the past, before he had fused the flying spirit sea dance method with it, he had also cultivated this set of methods. However, just as the 3 water-like true essence diffused out, enveloping Wang Xianjing, Wang Xuanjing's body suddenly ignited with a ghostly green flame, and Wang Xuanjing's face suddenly twisted in pain. Li Xuanru and Zhao Xuanji were so frightened that the true essence in their hands froze for a moment, but then they heard Lu Ping's urgent shout, "Don't stop." Li Xuanru and Zhao Xuanji's expressions turned cold, and they clenched their teeth. The true essence in their hands became even thicker, and although it was still no match for the green flames emitting from Wang Xuanjing's body, it was still able to slightly suppress the flames. Right at this moment, a dark blue true essence suddenly spread out from Wang Xuanjing's back. The green flame and the dark blue true essence collided and immediately issued a chi-chi sound. The dark blue true essence and the green flame cancelled each other out, returning to a dense cloud of spirit chi and spreading out. Wang Xuanjing's expression became more and more painful, and Tianqin Laozu sneered, "Idiot, it is possible to use water to defeat fire, but it also depends on what kind of water is water, and what kind of fire is fire." This green flame was obtained by Tianqin Laozu in the East Sea, and it was usually used for alchemy. The green flame contained a trace of Tianqin Laozu's Dharma manifestation stage true essence, and was not something that a core forging stage cultivator could easily resolve. When Tianqin Laozu captured the four of them, Wang Xianjing was the one who was the most talkative. Tianqin Laozu wanted her to suffer a great loss, so he used the green flame to seal her cultivation. Tianqin Laozu knew that the Zhonghua branch mostly cultivated water or ice attribute spells, so after being sealed by the green flame, she would inevitably suffer a lot. Of course, the green flame that sealed Wang Xianjing was only a remnant of this kind of heaven and earth spirit fire. If Lu Ping and the other two had enough true essence to support it, they could also break the green flame seal, but it would take more time, and Wang Xianjing would suffer more. This time, not only Daoist Xian Sen, but even Daoist Xian Su couldn't stand it anymore. Just as he was about to plead with Tianqin Laozu, he heard Lu Ping suddenly shout. The originally dark blue true essence suddenly became even darker, and in an instant, the blue true essence was dyed black, and once again rushed towards the green flame on Wang Xuanjing's body. This time, there was a chi-chi sound, but it wasn't the sound of an evenly matched opponent, but the sound of the flame being annihilated. Ah! Chu Ting let out a soft cry, and then tightly covered her mouth. Looking around, she found that everyone, including Tianqin Laozu, had a look of disbelief on their faces. The green flame was a high-grade earth step heaven and earth spirit fire. How could it be so easily suppressed by Lu Ping's true essence? Boy, what kind of heaven and earth spirit water did you refine to advance to the middle stage of core forging? Tianqin Laozu coldly asked. How could ordinary heaven and earth spirit water restrain her green flame? Moreover, this boy's true essence was far richer and purer than ordinary people. She didn't think that after not seeing him for several decades, Lu Tianling's disciple would actually produce such a talent. Daoist Wang Xianjing coughed up a mouthful of blood, and cried out, "It hurts." Then she stood up and proudly looked at Tianqin Laozu. She turned around and patted Lu Ping's shoulder, giggling, "Ninth junior brother, not bad, not bad. Senior sister will owe you a favor again." Wang Xianjing took the healing pill from Lu Ping's hand and stuffed it into her mouth without hesitation. She naturally had healing pills on her body, but she knew that her junior brother's pills could only be better than hers. At this time, Lu Ping once again looked at Yin Xianchu. Lu Ping looked for a long time, then suddenly smiled. His body's protective aura was like a budding lotus flower, blooming layer by layer. When he stood on top of a 6th-grade white jade lotus aura, he casually flicked a purple flame towards Yin Xianchu. Chu Ting's eyes narrowed, and she stammered, "Eastern purple chi flame." The celestial zither ancestor's expression was so gloomy that it almost condensed into water. Chapter 500. Rumble. It was as if the entire jolting hibernation island was about to tremble. Just as Lu Ping's east-rising purple chi flame came into contact with Yin Xuanchu's imprisoned body, something seemed to explode in an instant. An enormous force surged over, and the whistling spiritual chi vortex spread out in all directions. Aside from Tianqin Laozu, the other cultivators subconsciously opened up their protective chi. They saw that the place where Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu had just stood had turned into a huge ball of mist and dust. Half of this ball of mist looked eerily white, while the other half was dark purple. Spiritual Master Xiansen waved his hand to disperse the dust that filled the air. He saw that the place where Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu had stood had become two distinct regions. Behind Yin Xianchu was a layer of ice and snow, while behind Lu Ping was a heat wave formed from purple chi. The two clashed, and white mist slowly rose, enveloping the two of them like a mirage. When Yin Xianchu regained his senses, he thrust his pitch-black short swords forward. However, he suddenly discovered that the two swords were abruptly sluggish, unable to stab any further. Only then did Yin Xianchu raise his head, only to see Lu Ping looking at him with a smile. "Senior brother Lu." Yin Xianchu put away his short swords in shock and looked around. Only then did he realize that other than Fa Xiang Laozu and her disciple, there were also several Jinling core forging cultivators. Yin Xianchu subconsciously tightened his grip on the two swords in his hands, but he heard Lu Ping say with a smile, "Junior brother Yin, why aren't you on Soundwave Island? Why did you run into second senior sister and the others?" Before Yin Xianchu could say anything, Wang Xianjing, who had already suppressed her injuries, began to talk non-stop. It turned out that ever since Li Xuanru and the other two arrived in the East Sea, they had been secretly investigating the Overturned Seas Gang and the Crystal Palace on their master's orders. This time, the three of them followed a clue and found a secret camp that the Overturned Seas Gang had built in the perished Mystery Land. They were about to charge in when they saw Yin Xianchu charging out of the secret camp, drenched in blood. Li Xuanru and the other two naturally went up to meet them. Together with Yin Xianchu, they forced the pursuing Overturned Seas sect cultivators to retreat. However, just as the four of them had killed off the Overturned Seas sect cultivators, Tianqin Laozu and her disciple coincidentally passed by and happened to bump into them. The grudges of the previous generation had been passed down, so naturally, there wasn't much to be said between them. Thus, a conflict broke out after a few words. Tianqin Laozu's 5 female disciples all charged into battle. However, although Zhu Xianmeng and Xian Yan were 5th-layer core forging cultivators, and Xian Shu was 4th-layer core forging cultivators, Chu Ting and Li Xiuzhu were 3rd-layer core forging cultivators. On the other hand, although Wang Xianjing and Zhao Xuanji had just advanced to mid-core forging cultivators, Li Xuanru was a 6th-layer core forging expert. Together with the fierce Yin Xianchu, the four of them actually managed to beat Tianqin Laozu's 5 disciples into retreat. Fortunately, Li Xuanru didn't lose her rationality. She repeatedly restrained her junior sisters and brothers from being ruthless. However, ever since Yin Xianchu experienced spiritual master Li Xuanin's death, every move he made was aimed at his opponent's vitals. This angered Tianqin Laozu, and coupled with the fact that her disciple was no match for Tianling Laozu's disciple, she flew into a rage out of humiliation and wanted to deal with Yin Xianchu. Fortunately, Li Xuanru's thoughts were meticulous. At the last moment, she called out that Yin Xianchu was spiritual master Li Xuanin's disciple. Thus, Tianqin Laozu simply restrained the four of them one by one and handed them over to his disciples to bring them to Jingzhi Island. Although Lu Ping had countless questions in his heart, now wasn't the time. Thus, he said, "Senior sister, I'll send junior brother Yin off first. Senior sisters, please go and pay your respects to Martial Uncle Tian Xiang. I'll be there shortly." Wang Xianjing asked in confusion, why send junior brother Yin off? Could it be that junior brother Yin has some secret mission of our sect on this trip to the Eastern Sea? Only then did Lu Ping realize that the 3 senior sisters didn't know that Yin Xianchu had been expelled. Thus, he said, "I'll explain the details to the 3 senior sisters in a moment. For now, you should go and pay your respects to Martial Uncle Tian Xiang." Lu Ping had already noticed that Yin Xianchu didn't want to stay here any longer. Spiritual Master Xian Sun and the others also understood and called out, "Senior Sister Tianqin, Martial Niche Xuanru, please go to the cave dwelling to chat. Martial Uncle Tian Xiang has been waiting for a long time." Lu Ping escorted Yin Xianchu out of Jingzhi Island. Then, he frowned and asked, "Didn't we agree to lay low on Hearing Waves Island for a few years? Why are we fighting the overflowing ocean sect now? Could it be that you haven't been to Soundwave Island all these years?" Yin Xianchu revealed a trace of surprise and said, "I've been in seclusion on Soundwave Island for 3 years. I've only traveled in the perished mystery realm for a year." Lu Ping laughed involuntarily and said, "I didn't think of that. But why did you go against the Overflowing Seas Gang again? You should know that the Overflowing Seas Gang is just a facade for the Crystal Palace. If you provoke the Crystal Palace, it'll be troublesome." Yin Xianchu asked, did the leader you left on Soundwave Island lose her memory before? Lu Ping was shocked and asked without hesitation, how did you know? Yin Xianchu said, she seems to be able to think of something at every moment these past few years. She's already secretly killed quite a few cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang. She's even killed a few cultivators from Water Crystal Palace, including 2 early-stage core forging Water Crystal Palace disciples. She's caused the subordinates you left on Soundwave Island to tremble in fear. Lu Ping was shocked and said, nothing happened on Soundwave Island, right? Yin Xianchu said, not really. That Qi Lianying is very meticulous. Although she has been secretly assassinating the Overflowing Seas gang's cultivators, she did not reveal her whereabouts. But this time, she was a little careless. The Overflowing Seas gang clearly sensed that someone was secretly targeting them, so they set up such a trap. Fortunately, after I came out of seclusion this time, I had a sudden impulse to kill a few of the Overflowing Seas gang's cultivators to avenge them when they teamed up with Ouyang Weijian to trap me. That Qi Lianying also knew that my strength was not below hers, so she agreed. But she did not want to be ambushed. If it weren't for the 3 senior sisters, I'm afraid that even if I don't die, I would have been seriously injured for years. Lu Ping said, let's stop for now. Go back and tell Qi Lianying what I said. I still have some matters to attend to. After I'm done, I will return to Soundwave Island and talk to her in detail. Yin Xianchu thought for a while and said, do you know something about Qi Lianying? She said that you once said that she might be from the North Sea. Lu Ping was startled and said, it's just a guess. I can't be sure. These things seem to be old scores from decades ago. Maybe before we can figure it out ourselves, someone will be eager to tell us. Yin Xianchu did not know what Lu Ping meant, but he could tell that Lu Ping seemed to be a little reluctant to talk about these things, so he did not probe further. Instead, he said, I will bring your words back. It's just that you've been a hands-off shopkeeper all these years, and there seems to be some unresolved matters on the island. That Qi Lianying also did not make any decisions for you. It's good that you go back as soon as possible. Yin Xianchu thought for a while and asked again, is the matter you want to deal with related to the Overseas Cultivation World's auction in the illusory Spirit Island at the center of the Fallen Mystery Land? This time, Lu Ping was surprised and said, you know about it too. Yin Xianchu did not think much of it and said, I'm afraid that all the core forging adepts in the entire Fallen Mystery Land already know about it. Why do you think that Qi Lianying was so determined to destroy the secret base of the Overturned Seas faction? Other than the hatred in her memory, she wanted to rob some spirit stones so that she could broaden her horizons at the illusory Spirit Islands trade fair. Lu Ping was a little confused and said, didn't they say that only Dharma Power Laozu's team can participate in the auction? Yin Xianchu laughed and said, so you still don't know about this. Although the illusory Spirit Islands trade fair also has a threshold, as long as one is a mid-core forging adept or above, they can enter the city to participate in this time's trade fair. However, to participate in the most important overseas auction, other than having to be led by an independent Dharma Power adept or above, other non-affiliated adepts who want to participate in the auction must be at least late core forging or above, and they must first put down 100 high-grade spirit stones before they can enter. Lu Ping laughed and said, it's fine if it's late core forging adepts. After all, not too many people can enter the auction, but 100 high-grade spirit stones is equivalent to 1,000,000 spirit stones. Even an ordinary mid-core forging adept may not have that much wealth. Yin Xianchu said, indeed, for ordinary core forging adepts in the East Sea, 100 high-grade spirit stones is not a small amount, let alone us North Sea adepts. So, after discussing with Qi Lianying, we will only go to Illusory Spirit Island to broaden our horizons. As for the final auction, we will not go. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat and he said, that Qi Lianying should have a Dharma Power elder behind her. Did she not ask her elder for help? Yin Xianchu said in surprise, is there such a thing? Then he shook his head and said, she only said that she wanted to go to Illusory Spirit Island and did not say that she would participate in the auction. Either she did not ask her elder for help, or she did ask, but they did not agree. Lu Ping nodded thoughtfully. It seemed that Tianqin Laozu did not want Qi Lianying to participate in this event. He hesitated and asked, "If you want to participate in the auction, I think the sect." Yin Xianchu interrupted him and said, "I just want to go and see the people and scenery of Illusory Spirit Island. I will not go to the auction." Lu Ping did not dwell on this matter and said, "That's good. If you come across anything in Illusory Spirit Island that catches your eye and needs spirit stones, don't forget to let me know." Yin Xianchu smiled and said, "Don't worry, with a brother like you, many treasures boy, how could I forget you?" After sending off Yin Xianchu, when Lu Ping returned to the cave residence, Li Xuanru asked quietly, "Junior brother Yin has left? Does he have a suitable place to go?" Lu Ping knew that everyone should have heard about Yin Xianchu, so he said, "Don't worry, he is now on Junior brother's Hearing Waves Island. There is no problem for the time being." Li Xuanru nodded and said no more. Everyone in the cave residence naturally heard the conversation between the two. When Tianqin Laozu heard Hearing Waves Island, for some reason, there was a strange look in his eyes. Chapter 501. At this moment, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu, who was sitting at the head of the table, suddenly stretched out his hand towards Li Xuanru and the others. The spiritual qi in the cave once again set off a violent wave. Li Xuanru, Zhao Xuanji, and Wang Xuanjing's bodies suddenly trembled. Under Lu Ping's shocked gaze, a line of spiritual energy suddenly appeared on Li Xuanru's neck. Then, under the influence of the violent wave of spiritual energy, this line of spiritual energy suddenly collapsed. Lu Ping quickly looked at Zhao Xuanji and Wang Xianjing, only to see that a green true essence wedge had been pulled out from Zhao Xuanji's back. When he looked at Wang Xianjing, there was no abnormality. The green flames on Wang Xuanjing's body also didn't appear again. Lu Ping's heart trembled violently. Originally, despite Lu Ping's efforts, he had more or less broken Fa Xiang Laozu's restriction. It was impossible for him not to feel the slightest bit complacent. But now, Lu Ping realized how shallow he was. The line of spiritual energy wrapped around Li Xuanru's neck and the true essence wedge that pierced Zhao Xuanji's back clearly told Lu Ping that Fa Xiang Laozu's method was far from something a small mid-core forging cultivator like him could completely break. Lu Ping suddenly felt like a basin of cold water had been poured over his head. Li Xuanru and Zhao Xuanji also looked at Tianqin Laozu with lingering fear, but they saw that Tianqin Laozu's expression was already calm, as if she had already expected that Celestial Phenomenon Laozu would make a move. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu looked at Tianqin Laozu and said with a smile, "Although the younger generation doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, it is still commendable for you to be able to break a few restrictions. It's just that using this method on your own juniors is a bit too much." Tianqin Laozu smiled and said, "Martial uncle, it's not like you don't know that these methods are only used to teach them a lesson. When the time is up, it will naturally dissipate." Celestial Phenomenon Laozu shook his head and said, "It will always make the younger generation fearful. It's better to use this technique less in the future." Tianqin Laozu saw the seriousness in Tianxiang Laozu's words and couldn't help but agree. He then continued, "Speaking of which, this disciple has lost face. Of the four of them, two of them were completely unsealed by him. For senior sister Lu to have such a disciple under her tutelage, she has truly surpassed the other disciples under me." Zhu Xianmeng and the others who were standing behind the celestial zither ancestor all lowered their heads. The celestial phenomenon ancestor glanced at the disciples behind the celestial zither ancestor and said in a displeased tone, "Martial uncle, are you trying to get some face from martial nephew?" Lyra Laozu didn't say anything. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu didn't linger on this matter.
In the entire Jinling, there was no one else other than Celestial Phenomenon Laozu who understood the thoughts of this disciple in front of him. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu nodded at Taoist Master Xiansen and said, "Give the things to her." Taoist Master Xiansen passed a storage artifact to Tianqin Laozu and said, "Senior sister, this is a batch of treasures that our sect has prepared for these disciples. We will have to trouble senior sister for this trade fair." Tian Qin Laozu's divine sense swept through the storage artifact and inadvertently glanced in the direction of Lu Ping and Lu Ping. She was a little surprised and said, "This time, our sect can be considered to have spent a lot of money to actually prepare so many treasures for them. This isn't the style of our sect. If the treasures are obtained too easily, it will inevitably cause them to feel anxious." When Lu Ping saw Tian Qin Laozu glance at them, he suddenly had a thought. His intuition told him that Tian Qin Laozu wanted to use the items in the storage artifact to do something. However, Lu Ping was also helpless. Since Tian Qin Laozu was leading them to participate in the Fantasy Spirit City's trade fair, the treasures supported by the sect would naturally be carried by her. Taoist Master Xian Sun smiled and said, "Originally, there were still 3 to 5 third-generation disciples who had reached the 6th layer of core forging. However, this time, the sect not only valued their own accumulation, but also their contributions to the sect over the years. Therefore, it can't be considered as them reaping without sowing. Moreover, if they are lucky enough to obtain the treasures and advance to the late stage of core forging, I'm afraid that the responsibility they have to bear will be even greater." Tian Qin Laozu nodded and said, "I have some understanding of the situation in the North Sea. However, if we take out so many things at once, will it have any effect on our sect?" Tian Qin Laozu actually said these words to Tian Xiang Laozu. However, Taoist Master Xian Sun looked at Tian Xiang Laozu and still continued, "Senior sister, you may not know this, but a few years ago, the North Sea Cultivation World discovered a large spirit stone mine on Frost Island. This greatly alleviated the predicament of the North Sea Cultivation World's barren cultivation world." Tian Qin Laozu made an "oh" sound and said, "I have also heard of this in the East Sea." Taoist Master Xiansun chuckled and said, "However, senior sister may not know that not far from this large spirit stone mine, our sect has also secretly discovered a medium spirit stone mine." This time, Tian Qin Laozu's eyes lit up. She said, "There's such a thing?" Taoist Master Xiansun smiled and nodded. However, Taoist Master Xian Tong hurriedly added, "In the North Sea, Xian Ling's sect is the only sect that can monopolize a medium spirit stone mine.
Furthermore, Xian Ling's sect has occupied a spirit stone mine that had once been destroyed by the demon race. This time, our sect has secretly occupied an intact spirit stone mine. Right now, Senior Sister Tian Ling has built an ice palace there and is personally standing guard there. It is absolutely safe." Taoist Master Xian Tong was about to continue when he heard Taoist Master Xian Su suddenly cough. Taoist Master Xian Tong finally realized something and embarrassedly looked at Tian Qin Laozu. He saw that Tian Qin Laozu was looking at Taoist Master Xian Tong with a faint smile. Taoist Master Xian Tong shuddered for no reason and subconsciously said, "Actually, other than Frost Island, our sect has also developed a lot in recent years. For example, Senior Uncle Tian Xiang has managed Jingxia Island in the perished Secret Realm and has accumulated a lot of wealth for our sect in the East Sea. Another example is the third-generation disciple Lu Shenping has opened up Huangli Island in the sea region where the demon race is rampaging. Now that senior brother Jiang is standing guard over it, it is also a place where treasures are gathered." Taoist Master Xian Tong's voice grew softer and softer. In the end, he couldn't even see Tian Xiang Laozu. He said directly, "Everyone, please leave and make your own preparations. This Phantom City Festival is all-inclusive, and the things the sect has prepared for you will only be used to exchange for spirit items that are suitable for you. If you want to obtain anything else, it will depend on your own abilities." After everyone left, Tian Xiang Laozu looked at Tian Qin Laozu and smiled, "Are you still going to fight Tian Ling this time?" Tian Qin Laozu smiled and said, "It's better for me to fight her than for others to fight her. How can others be a match for her? At least with me around, the others in our sect will be much more at ease. The other sects will also be less worried because I am fighting her." Tian Xiang Laozu nodded in satisfaction and said, "Not bad, you are much more mature than that willful Shenqin from 60 years ago." Tian Qin Laozu giggled and said, "But Martial Nephew is really going to fight Lu Tianling." Lu Ping walked out of the cave dwelling, his interest in the Mystic Spirit City's trade fair was piqued. Since the trade fair wasn't only about spirit items, Lu Ping wanted to get a share of the spoils. However, Lu Ping also knew that the requirements to enter Mystic Spirit City weren't low. Not only was there a mid-core forging realm cultivation base, but even high-grade spirit stones had to be used. If Lu Ping wanted to get a share of the spoils, he would first have to be rich enough. Lu Ping looked through the storage ring and the golden house. After thinking for a long time, he was afraid that he would have to start with pills. Lu Ping now had a few precious pills in his hands, and they would definitely become popular items at the festival. Not to mention, the minor forging spirit pill was not any less valuable than ordinary spirit items, not to mention the heart forging pill and other heaven-defying pills. Unfortunately, although Lu Ping had a lot of rare spirit herbs on him, it was not enough to refine these rare pills. Lu Ping's cave on Jingzha Island was filled with restrictions by Lu Ping. The top-grade Linchuan cauldron was placed in front of Lu Ping, and the purple eastern flame was burning fiercely, almost swallowing the entire cauldron. This was the minor forging spirit pill that Lu Ping had gathered from Jinren Xian Senator. It was not easy for him to obtain the last 30-100-year spirit herb that he needed from Jinren Xian Senator. Although the minor forging spirit pill was a half-step Dharma pill, it was not the kind of pill that could only be produced one at a time. Instead, it was like a normal pill that could be produced in the core forging stage, with 10 pills in a cauldron. With Lu Ping's current alchemy skills, although it was still difficult for him to produce a half-step Dharma pill, it was easy for him to achieve a success rate of 30 to 40%. However, at this time, Lu Ping's eyebrows were furrowed tightly, as if he had encountered a difficult problem. At this time, Lu Ping was multitasking. While he was taking care of the cauldron, he was also holding 2 jade scrolls in his hands. He was carefully examining something. One of the 2 jade scrolls contained the minor spirit forging pellets recipe that Lu Ping obtained from Clear Stream Cavern Abode, and the other half of the spirit forging pellets recipe that Lu Ping obtained from Aou's Ice Dragon Cavern Abode. It recorded the method to concoct the spirit forging pellet before casting the purification technique. Qingjian Laozu had clearly stated in the minor forging spirit pill that the minor forging spirit pill was an imitation of the spirit forging pill. Even though Qingjian Laozu did not know the refining method of the spirit forging pill, he should have been very familiar with the refining process. When Lu Ping was refining the minor forging spirit pill, he suddenly thought of this. Thus, he took out the half of the recipe and compared it. As expected, there were many similarities. Thus, Lu Ping had an impulse. If he refined the minor forging spirit pill before the purification technique was used, he would follow the refining method of the minor forging spirit pill. After the purification, he would still follow the method recorded in the minor forging spirit pill. He didn't know what the effect would be. With this idea in mind, Lu Ping could no longer suppress his curiosity. He didn't think about the rarity of the dozens of rare spirit herbs and the vitality dew. He took out the Linchuan cauldron and the east-rising purple flame and began to experiment. It wasn't until Lu Ping used the spirit fire smelting purification technique that he had modified from the refining technique that the temperature in the cauldron stabilized. Only then did Lu Ping calm down a lot. He was very uncertain about his previous bold attempt, but now that it had come to this, Lu Ping could only keep going. What a brilliant pill! Very good alchemy technique. Outside Lu Ping's temporary cave, Tianqin Laozu and Daoist Xiansen were standing together. They looked at the rising purple heat wave in the direction of Lu Ping's cave and suddenly spoke. Chapter 502. Tianqin Laozu turned to Master Xiansen and asked, Junior Xiansen, do you know who this kid's alchemy master is? Even if that Lu Tianling is also a genius, he can't teach such a genius in alchemy. Master Xiansen laughed bitterly and automatically filtered the second half of the sentence. He said, this kid's alchemy skills should be from another inheritance and not from the Elixir Pavilion. I heard that he had a fortuitous encounter and worked very hard, but he never entered the Elixir Pavilion until he became a master alchemist. Only then did he manage a high-grade cauldron in the Elixir Pavilion. However, he seems to have a better cauldron on him. This cauldron has always been in the elixir pavilion and is rarely used. Oh, Tian Qin Laozu asked curiously, Master didn't intervene because of this? Xian Sun Laozu laughed bitterly. Why not? I just don't know what this kid said to Master Tianlu, but the rules of the elixir pavilion have never been applied to him. Tian Qin Laozu nodded, but the curiosity in her eyes grew stronger. Master Xian Sun couldn't help but laugh bitterly. He had seen this kind of curiosity many times in the past. Every time this kind of curiosity appeared on a person's face, the person she was paying attention to would not be at peace. Among the second-generation disciples, other than Lu Tianling, even Jiang Tianlin had suffered under her pranks. The cauldron is about to be opened. Tian Qin Laozu murmured. It's a pill that's half a step into the transcendence stage. Looks like it's not a single pill, but I wonder what the success rate is. Tian Qin Laozu suddenly thought of something and turned to Master Xian Sr. The Fantasy City Conference is around the corner, but this kid is cultivating in seclusion, and the pill he's refining is of such a high grade. I think he must have a request during the conference. I just don't know what kind of pill he's refining. Since this kid is our sect's master alchemist, I think Junior Xiansen should know some of his skills. Junior Xiansen, do you know what his best pill is? Spiritual Master Xiansen shook his head and said, although this brat isn't in the pill pavilion, he has quite a few famous elixirs. Among them, the most famous one is the spirit water alchemy technique. I heard that it's a rather miraculous alchemy technique. Back then, my bloodline was broken by a secret technique of the demon clan. If it wasn't for the spirit water meridian nourishing pill that he refined, my cultivation would have been crippled long ago, not to mention benefiting from the disaster and advancing further. The Sky Zither ancestors' interest was piqued. The technique of refining pills with spiritual water is indeed close to being lost in the cultivation world, but from what Junior Brother has said, it seems that this child's famous pill isn't just one. Taoist Master Xiansen nodded and said, that's right. This kid also has the pill transformation technique, which happens to be superior to the blood condensing pill. Right now, almost all of our sect's blood condensing pills are in his hands. Not only that, he also seems to have a rather mysterious pill called the minor forging pill. That year, Senior Brother Liang Xianfeng was able to successfully refine the heavenly wind leaf with the help of this pill. After saying this, Taoist Master Xiansen told Tian Qin Laozu about how Taoist Master Xian Jing used the spirit stealing technique to steal the essence of the spirit forging pill. Tian Qin Laozu snorted coldly and said, Xian Jing is talented, but he always wants to take shortcuts. I think that even if he refines a mid-earth level heaven and earth spirit fire, he might not be able to condense a 6th grade golden pill. Even if he refines a 6th grade golden pill, he might not be able to withstand the backlash from the secret technique of advancing to the Dharma stage. Tian Qin Laozu said a few words to Taoist Master Xian Jing, then said, about the minor forging pill, how much do you know, Junior Brother? Taoist Master Xiansen shook his head and said, I don't know much about this. Master Fornax seems to have given an order that other than the few Laozu of our sect, only the masters of the pill pavilion know a little about it. However, they are strictly forbidden from spreading it. If it weren't for the fact that my cultivation has improved greatly and my position in the sect has risen, I'm afraid that I wouldn't even have heard of the minor forging pill. Minor forging pill. Tian Qin Laozu muttered, he actually dares to call it the minor forging pill. It seems that this kid really has a lot of good stuff in his hands. It's just strange that Master didn't ask him for the pill formula. After all, since this kind of pill has been exposed, it shouldn't be something that a pill master should have. Taoist Master Xiansen decisively shut his mouth. He definitely wouldn't participate in this kind of thing. Inside the cave, Lu Ping used the spirit fire smelting purification technique. After that, he refined the minor forging pill according to the pill formula. When it came to the pill condensing stage, Lu Ping used the spirit explosion technique to explode another 8 high-grade spirit stones. Then, he used the amethyst royal jelly to pour a large drop into the pill furnace. All of his divine sense was activated to maintain the 6 pills inside the pill furnace. Lu Ping suppressed the joy in his heart and opened the cauldron again. Immediately, 6 purple medicinal pellets flew out from the cauldron and flew in all directions. Lu Ping took out a jade crystal bottle, formed a few hand seals, and shouted, "Collect." The 6 pills that were blocked by the surrounding restrictions suddenly seemed to be attracted by something. One by one, they flew into the jade crystal bottle. Lu Ping let the eastern purple chi flame continue to roast the Linchuan cauldron. He impatiently put the jade crystal bottle under his nose and sniffed it. Then, he poured out a purple pill and carefully examined it with his divine sense. His eyes shone with a green light and he carefully examined it again. Then, he suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. His laughter passed through the simple restrictions that Lu Ping had placed in the cave. Within a radius of 1 to 2 miles, his laughter caused many of the Jinling disciples on the island to be confused. Only Li Xuanru, Daoist Master Xian Tian, Su Xianpeng, and Wei Xuanhuan had excited expressions. Because other than their close relationship with Lu Ping, everyone could also tell that Lu Ping was definitely refining an extremely rare type of pill from how Lu Ping had borrowed spirit herbs from them. This unbridled laughter clearly showed that Lu Ping had successfully refined this type of pill. On the side, Tianqin Laozu saw a trace of joy on Daoist Master Xian Sen's face. She smiled and said, "Looks like Junior Brother has helped this kid a lot. This kid has to owe Junior Brother a favor for refining this type of pill. A favor from an alchemy master, or even an alchemy grandmaster in the future, is invaluable." Daoist Master Xian Sen was in a good mood and his words were not as cautious as before. He smiled and said, "Senior sister must be joking. Who in our sect doesn't know that you have surpassed your master? After advancing to the transcendent stage, I'm afraid your alchemy skills will surpass Master Tianlu. There is no need to lower yourself to this kid's level." Tianqin Laozu smiled and did not say anything. After a while, she said, "Guess what kind of pill he is refining?" In the cave, Lu Ping, who had just finished laughing, carefully looked at the 6 purple pills in the jade crystal bottle again. The reason why he was laughing so unbridled was not only because his success rate of refining half-step transcendence pills had increased, but also because there was an unwritten rule in the alchemy world. Once the success rate of refining half-step transcendence pills reached 60%, it meant that an alchemy master had the right to advance to become an alchemy grandmaster. The difficulty of refining a minor forging spirit pill was not as simple as refining a normal half-step transcendence pill. Furthermore, he had used half a set of refining methods for the spirit forging pill. An alchemy grandmaster. Although Lu Ping had never refined a transcendence pill before, at this moment, he was extremely confident that he could definitely become an alchemy grandmaster. Furthermore, it would not take long for him to advance. Another piece of news that made Lu Ping ecstatic was the 6 purple minor forging spirit pills in his hands. Originally, after refining a minor forging spirit pill, it should be as white as jade with a crystal clear surface. However, when these 6 purple pills came out of the cauldron, Lu Ping was a little nervous. He suspected that his attempt this time would end in failure. However, after Lu Ping used the alchemy testing secret technique to carefully examine the pills, he found that the effects of the minor forging spirit pill had not weakened, but had greatly increased. Lu Ping had personally come into contact with a spirit forging pellet before. No one knew better than him how strong the medicinal essence contained in a spirit forging pellet was. However, the 6 small spirit forging pellets Lu Ping concocted each contained a quarter of the medicinal essence of a spirit forging pellet. What did this mean? Back then, spiritual master Xian Jing had used the spirit stealing secret technique to steal a quarter of the essence of a spirit forging pill. This caused spiritual master Liang Xianfeng to be unable to completely condense the Tianfeng leaf. After that, he had to swallow 3 minor forging spirit pills to resolve the problem. Now, the improved minor forging spirit pills in Lu Ping's hands were 3 times more effective than the minor forging spirit pills that Laozu had created. This meant that each of Lu Ping's improved minor forging spirit pills was equivalent to a quarter of the real spirit forging pill. Previously, unless a late-stage core forging cultivator encountered an embarrassing situation like spiritual master Liang Xianfeng, Laozu's minor forging spirit pills were basically ineffective for late-stage core forging cultivators, especially those who were preparing to condense a 7th-grade golden core or above. They could only be used by cultivators who had smelted heaven and earth spirit objects for the first or second time. But now, Lu Ping's modified minor forging spirit pellets might still be ineffective for late core forging realm cultivators. But if 3 pellets were taken together, it would be equivalent to 3/4 of a spirit forging pellet's effect. Although it still couldn't compare to a real spirit forging pellet, it was still valuable for late core forging realm cultivators. The only pity was that a cultivator could only take 3 of these elixirs that were half a step to the Dharma realm. Lu Ping was now sure that the minor forging spirit pills that Laozu had created were definitely related to the real spirit forging pill. Use half of the refining method for the spirit forging pill was also definitely true. Now, Lu Ping already knew the names of all the spirit herbs he needed to concoct the spirit forging pellet. He also had half a set of the pellet's concoction method, and he even had half a set of Myriad Wonder Dew in the Golden House. As long as Lu Ping obtained the second set of the pellet's concoction method, he would be able to concoct this famous medicinal pellet that had been lost for 4,000 years with his alchemy skills in the Grandmaster realm. Another month passed and Lu Ping concocted 6 cauldrons of medicinal pellets in the cave dwelling. On average, he concocted 1 cauldron of medicinal pellets every 5 days. All of them were precious medicinal pellets for late core forging and half-step avatar realm cultivators. Lu Ping had almost used up all the 1,000-year-old and 3,000-year-old spirit herbs he had collected over the years. He even took all the spirit herbs from his 3 senior martial sisters. Chapter 503. Before Lu Ping came to the East Sea, he did not know that he was going to participate in such a grand event. Therefore, although Lu Ping had brought almost all of his wealth with him, he could not take out treasures like the spiritual demon peach to exchange for what he needed. Therefore, he had to make the best use of the month before the grand event. The Fantasy Spirit Island was a large island in the fallen secret land. There was a huge mountain range on the Fantasy Spirit Island called the Fantasy Spirit Mountain, and the Fantasy Spirit City was located at the foot of the mountain. The Fantasy Spirit Island was the place where the only giant spiritual mine in the overseas region was located. This giant spiritual mine was distributed in the mountain range of the Fantasy Spirit Mountain. With this giant spiritual mine as the center, there were 4 other large spiritual mines on the 4 large and medium-sized islands around the Fantasy Spirit Island. Due to the amazing wealth contained in the Fantasy Spirit Island and the 4 surrounding islands, the overseas cultivators considered this place to be the center of the entire fallen secret land. They built cities on the 4 islands and jointly divided the ownership of the 5 spiritual mines. In the past, for the sake of 1 giant spiritual mine and the 4 large spiritual mines, the overseas human cultivators and the overseas demon cultivators waged a war that lasted for decades. In the end, because the fallen secret land was closer to the coastal waters of the human race had a lot of advantages. The giant spiritual mine and 2 large spiritual mines were occupied by the human race, while the other 2 large spiritual mines were taken by the demon race. Because the 3 spiritual mines that the human race took were jointly fought by the overseas human cultivators, the 3 spiritual mines were naturally divided among the overseas human cultivators after the war. However, the 9 overseas sects led by the Crystal Palace completely occupied the only giant spiritual mine. Among the 9 sects, the Crystal Palace was the only large sect and occupied the largest share of the giant spiritual mine. The other 8 large sects included the 4 sects in the East Sea, 3 in the South Sea, and the only one that belonged to the North Sea was the Fei Ling sect. After the Fei Ling sect was destroyed, its share of the giant spiritual mine was divided among the other 8 sections. The remaining 2 large spiritual mines were owned by the overseas medium-sized sects that participated in the war. However, there were 25 overseas medium-sized sects that had the right to divide these 2 large spiritual mines. Among them, the South Sea had 11, the East Sea had 10, and the North Sea had the least. Originally, there were 5. Later, the Songhai sect, which was originally 1 sect, split into 2 sects, the Songhai sect and the Songlang sect. Naturally, their strength was greatly reduced, so they were pushed out of the 25 sections. In the end, a medium-sized sect from the East Sea replaced them, leaving the North Sea with 4 sections. There were naturally more than these 25 medium-sized sects in the entire overseas cultivation world. However, these 25 medium-sized sects were the most powerful among all the medium-sized sections. They began to copy the actions of the 9 major sects in dividing the giant spiritual minds and occupied the 2 large spiritual minds. After the start of every overseas trading event, the most fundamental reason why each sect had a Dharma manifestation cultivator to lead them was that after the auction, the Laozu of each sect would gather to discuss the redistribution of the 3 spiritual minds. And this time, the boudoir had come with a strong force. Their ultimate goal was the share that Fei Ling's sect had in the giant spiritual minds. Although the boudoir's rise had the support of the 4 major sects in the East Sea, when it came to the distribution of the profits from the giant spiritual minds, Fei Ling's sect's share had already been taken by the other 8 major sects for thousands of years. Now that they had to give it back, it was likely that even the 4 major sects would not be able to support them again. This time, Jinling had come with a request. Jinling and Xian Ling's sect were the leaders of the North Sea cultivation world. Among the 25 medium-sized sects that had divided the 2 large spiritual minds, they were only ranked in the middle. However, after Jinling's Tian Kong Laozu had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, Tian Lin and Tian Ling had advanced to the Dharma stage, and now that Tian Qin Laozu had returned, Jinling now had 4 mid-Dharma adepts and 5 early Dharma adepts. In total, there were 9 Dharma Laozu. This level of power could be ranked in the top 10 among the 25 medium-sized sects in the overseas region. Hence, Jinling also wanted to expand its share of the 2 large spiritual minds. With Tian Qin Laozu in the lead, the 2 late core forging adepts, Xian Sen and Xian Su, in addition to Xian Tian, Xian Hui, Xian Ru, Xian Bei, Xian Zhu, Xian Yu, Xian Su, and Lu Ping, a total of 11 people arrived at the center of the Fallen Mystery Land, where the only large spiritual mine in the overseas region was located, Phantom City. This was also the maximum number of people that Laozu, a medium-sized sect, could bring into Phantom City. If other adepts wanted to enter Phantom City, they would first have to be at the mid-core forging stage and then pay an entrance fee of 10 high-grade spirit stones. Just these 2 requirements alone were enough to keep low-level adepts and core forging adepts out of the city. Lu Ping and the others landed 10 miles away from Phantom Spirit City. The entire Phantom Spirit City was shrouded in a huge protective array formation, and the flight prohibition array formation would take effect 10 miles away. Hence, they had no choice but to walk into the city. To Lu Ping and the others, a 10-mile journey was but a matter of moments. Very quickly, the majestic Phantom City appeared before their eyes. The 80-foot-tall city walls flashed with runes from time to time. For thousands of years, the adepts stationed in Phantom City had continuously carved various restrictive spells on the city walls to strengthen the walls. In the past, the overseas human adepts had relied on Phantom City to defend against the attacks of dozens of Dharma laws of the overseas demon clan, Laozu. Thus, they had secured Phantom Island in the hands of the human clan and finally succeeded in occupying the large spiritual mine on Phantom Island. At the city gate, a late core forging adept from the Crystal Palace was leading a few adepts from other sects to check on the adepts entering and leaving Phantom City. There were a total of 8 such city gates in the entire Phantom City. The Crystal Palace adept did not show the slightest bit of surprise in front of Tian Qin Laozu, who was a Dharma adept. It was obvious that there were many Dharma adepts who frequently entered Phantom City. Furthermore, as an adept from the Crystal Palace, there was no need for them to show any humility towards a Dharma adept from a medium-sized sect in the North Sea. Receiving a token that looked like jade from Tian Qin Laozu, the Crystal Palace adept gave it a cursory look before returning it with both hands. Then, the group of 11 people walked into the city that was said to be the second largest in the entire East Sea. And the largest city was naturally owned by the largest sect in the East Sea, the Crystal Palace, and the name of the city was the Crystal Palace. Just as the group was about to enter the city gate, the sound of a whip suddenly came from behind Lu Ping and the others. When the group turned around to look, they saw a large, beautifully decorated carriage coming towards the city gate. The faces of Lu Ping and the others all turned ugly. Even the expressions of the adepts from the Crystal Palace who were guarding the city gate turned serious. 9 brackets extended out from the running cart in a row. Each of the brackets was fastened to the waist of a human cultivator. A cultivator who was driving the cart sat cross-legged at the front of the cart. He held a long whip in his hand. One glance was enough to tell that it was no ordinary item. He was driving the 9 human cultivators who were bound by the brackets forward. The cultivation of the 9 human adepts seemed to be imprisoned by the 9 supports around their waists. However, this did not prevent them from using their escape techniques to pull the carriage forward quickly. When they got closer, Lu Ping and the others could already see that there were 3 early-stage core forging cultivators in front of the 9 human adepts. The 6 adepts behind them were all late-stage blood condensation cultivators. The cultivator who was driving the 9 human adepts with the long whip was a mid-stage core forging cultivator from the demon race. Obviously, the cultivators in the carriage were from the demon race, and the 9 human adepts who were being pulled like livestock were Lu Ping's famous human pets of the demon race. When they arrived at the city gate, the demon cultivator who was driving the carriage jumped down from the carriage. He glanced coldly at Lu Ping and the others, then threw a scroll-like golden silk cloth into the hands of the Crystal Palace cultivator. The Crystal Palace cultivator looked coldly at the demon cultivator, then opened the silk cloth and examined it. Then, he gestured for the people behind him to let the carriage pass. The demon cultivator who was driving the carriage cracked his whip as if there was no one around him. The 9 human pets exerted strength under their feet and the carriage quickly passed through the city gate and into Fantasy Spirit City. From beginning to end, Lu Ping and the others didn't say a word. When the carriage was far away, enlightened Master Xian Su asked the Crystal Palace cultivator beside him, "Fellow Daoist, I don't know who the people in the carriage are, but they are undoubtedly from the demon race. Why are they able to enter Fantasy Spirit City?" When the Crystal Palace cultivator saw that enlightened Master Xian Su was an expert at the 9th level of the core forging realm, his expression became much more polite. He said helplessly, "Normally, the demon race is strictly forbidden to enter Fantasy Spirit City. However, this trade event is held by the entire overseas cultivation world. Naturally, high-level cultivators from both the human and demon races can participate. If I'm not wrong, the person in the carriage just now should be an expert of the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake clan. That's the only clan among the overseas demon clans that can go against our Crystal Palace. If you see them, you'd better stay away. The Emerald Sea Spirit Snake clan is not something that a small sect like yours can afford to offend. Aren't you afraid that the demon race cultivators will stir up trouble in Fantasy Spirit City? Fantasy Spirit City is the entrance to the only large spirit mine in the overseas region." The Crystal Palace cultivator laughed coldly and said, "There are 18 Dharma laws Laozu from various sects stationed in Fantasy Spirit City. There are 2 in the late Dharma laws stage and 8 in the mid Dharma laws stage. It's not a place that the demon race can easily get their hands on. Furthermore, when the event starts, all the Dharma laws adepts from various sects will enter the city. This Laozu from your sect should know that there are more than 50 human Laozu in Fantasy Spirit City. Even if there are some demon Laozu, how would they dare to stir up trouble? It's just that the human race and the demon race have been at odds for a long time. Both sides are evenly matched, so we have to maintain respect for the strong demons." Sage Xian Su asked a few more questions about the situation in Fantasy Spirit City and the news of the event. Then, he handed a storage bag to the Crystal Palace cultivator and said, "I'll have to trouble you to explain. Please take care of these things. When you're free, go to the city for a cup of spirit tea." The Crystal Palace cultivator exchanged some pleasantries and then took the storage bag. When Lu Ping and the others had gone far away, he opened the storage bag and took a look. There were 10 top-grade spirit stones inside. The Crystal Palace cultivator spat and said, "Those from the North Sea are really fucking poor." A cultivator at the side laughed and said, "Brother Lianshan, be content. If they were from the East Sea or the South Sea, who would look up to us gatekeepers?" The Crystal Palace cultivator said unhappily, "That's true. This is really not a good job. We can only hope that we can take advantage of those casual cultivators. It's just that those casual cultivators are probably even poorer. Chapter 504. Due to the Outer Endless Seas Trade Fair, Phantasmal Spirit City's standards for entering and exiting the city had been raised. However, there were still many low-level cultivators in Phantasmal Spirit City who had heard the news and rushed to the city ahead of time. Hence, when Lu Ping and the others entered the city, although there were high-level cultivators in the core forging realm and above everywhere, the low-level blood condensation and blood refining realm cultivators still occupied more than half of the city's population. Tian Qin Laozu led the group to a place where they could rent a cave abode. This was a place that the Fantasy Spirit City had already prepared for the various overseas sects to rest. Under the guidance of a core forging stage cultivator, the group arrived at a cave abode. After everyone had settled down, Tian Qin Laozu instructed everyone to familiarize themselves with the Fantasy Spirit City. 3 days later, the Fantasy Spirit City's auction officially began. Everyone gathered in the cave abode, and then Tian Qin Laozu disappeared without a trace. Enlightened Master Xuanqiu and Enlightened Master Xiansen seemed to have a plan. After bidding farewell to everyone, they left the cave abode. Enlightened Master Shen and the others discussed for a while and decided to go to the Fantasy Spirit City to see the prosperity of the Eastern Sea. The group of 7, including second senior sister Li Xuanru, were about to leave the cave abode when they saw that Lu Ping had no intention of touring the city. Li Xuanru asked curiously, "Ninth junior brother, why aren't you going?" Lu Ping smiled. "Senior brothers and sisters, please go ahead. I still have an appointment with someone here, so I'll have to stay here for a while." Li Xuanru wanted to ask who it was, but she thought of Yin Xianchu. She knew that it was inappropriate for Yin Xianchu to mingle with everyone, so she nodded and said, "Then we'll go first." After everyone left, Lu Ping took out a sound transmission sword from his storage ring and said something into it. Then the sound transmission sword turned into a stream of light and disappeared from the Fantasy Spirit City. Lu Ping waited in the cave abode for a while and found that no sound transmission sword returned. He knew that Qi Lianying and the others had not entered the Fantasy Spirit City yet, so he left the cave abode and casually called for a guide. He casually tipped the guide a mid-grade spirit stone, then followed the joyful guide into the Fantasy Spirit City. Lu Ping had been to the Northern Alliance's Chenyuan City, and he had also been to Skyren's Silver Sword City on Silver Sword Island. These were all big cities in the entire East China Sea. The Fantasy Spirit City was known as the second biggest city in the East China Sea. Whether it was in terms of size, quantity and quality of cultivators, or the collection of cultivation resources, it surpassed the largest Chenyuan city that Lu Ping had seen before. Under the guidance of the guide, Lu Ping first replenished his almost shriveled spirit grass pouch in various shops that sold spirit grass. Lu Ping now had 2 or 3 million low-grade spirit stones. These spirit stones could play a negligible role in Lu Ping's cultivation, and it was difficult for Lu Ping to exchange these spirit stones for high-grade spirit stones, so he used them all to buy spirit grass. Unfortunately, with the opening of the Fantasy Spirit City's trade fair, the prices of spirit grasses in the shops in the city also rose. 1,000-year spirit grasses were fine, but as long as it was 3,000-year spirit grasses, cultivators would have to pay high-grade spirit stones if they wanted to buy it. Fortunately, the Fantasy Spirit City lived up to its name as one of the biggest cities in the East China Sea. The supply of spirit grass in the city was sufficient. Although the price was on the high side, if this was the North China Sea, Lu Ping would not know where to find so many spirit grass. In just half a day, Lu Ping went in and out of shops that had been selling for dozens of years. He spent 2 million low-grade spirit stones, and Lu Ping had a total of more than 50 kinds of spirit grass. In addition, Lu Ping also spent nearly 100 high-grade spirit stones to buy more than 100 precious spirit grass of 3,000 years. In less than half a day, the entire Fantasy Spirit City was filled with rumors that someone was crazily buying spirit grass. However, after some investigation, they discovered that the person buying spirit grass in these shops was not the same person, but seemed to be an unintentional act of several unrelated people. However, the more attentive people soon discovered that something was wrong. Although the face of the cultivator buying spirit grass was different in each shop, at the same time, no one had ever bought a large amount of spirit grass in two shops at the same time. The truth was suddenly revealed. A cultivator had changed his face and was constantly going in and out of the big shops to buy spirit grass. Moreover, he spent millions of spirit stones. Even a late core forging cultivator might not be able to do such a thing. According to the shopkeepers of these shops, the person who came was only a mid-core forging cultivator. However, his cultivation level was different. Some said he was at the 4th layer, some said he was at the 5th layer, and some even thought he was at the 6th layer. This caused the people who secretly investigated this large amount of spirit grass to be confused. In the end, they could only leave the matter unsettled. In a rather hidden alley in the fantasy spirit city, a pale-faced and weak cultivator looked at the unconscious guide boy in front of him. After erasing a part of the boy's memory, the weak cultivator thought for a moment and stuffed a mid-grade spirit stone into the boy's pocket. Then, he turned around and left. After turning around, the weak scholar's body surged with waves of watery light. The weak scholar's clothes completely changed, and even his face became clear after a moment of blur. After the person walked out of the alley, Lu Ping, who had restored his true appearance, began to leisurely stroll around the fantasy spirit city. Lu Ping had been careless today. Although the fantasy spirit city was rich in cultivation resources, it was a place where crooks mixed with honest folk. In addition, the Grand Assembly was about to begin, so who knew how many spies were secretly following and monitoring him? Fortunately, Lu Ping's spiritual force was comparable to that of a 9th-stage core forging cultivator. After entering the spirit herb shop for the 3rd time, he discovered that something was wrong. Therefore, after leaving the shop, Lu Ping immediately got rid of the spies behind him. At the same time, he used the art of sea deception to change his appearance. At the same time, he used an illusion technique to temporarily confuse the guide boy, making him think that Lu Ping's appearance hadn't changed. Only then did he start to enter the big shops again. At the same time, he deliberately bought fewer spirit herbs in each shop. Therefore, it took Lu Ping half a day to walk through some of the big shops. Not long after Lu Ping left the alley, the guide boy woke up in a daze. He looked around and tried to remember why he was here. Suddenly, 2 cultivators walked into the alley. A tall cultivator grabbed the collar of the guide and asked, "Where's that person from just now?" The guide boy's face was full of fear. After hearing the person's shout, his eyes were full of confusion. The other cultivator with an expressionless face suddenly stretched out his hand and patted the guide boy's head. Then he withdrew his hand and said, "It's useless. Today's memory has been erased." The burly cultivator's face changed. He pushed the guide boy away and said with dissatisfaction, "What bad luck. It's not easy to find a fat sheep." The guide boy staggered back after being pushed by the burly cultivator. With a flick of his sleeve, the middle-grade spirit stone that Lu Ping had given him when he was unconscious fell out. The guide boy became anxious and scrambled to grab the middle-grade spirit stone on the ground. However, he saw that the spirit stone on the ground suddenly flew up and fell into the burly cultivator's hand. The burly cultivator murmured, "Damn it, I can't let this trip be in vain." The cold-faced cultivator looked at the burly cultivator with disdain and said, "Let's go. We still have to explain to the people above us. The situation in Phantom City is complicated now. It's not a place where people like us can behave atrociously. Be careful not to bump into an iron plate." The guide boy crawled on the ground. Seeing that the 2 had gone far away, he patted the dirt off his body and stood up. Then, he thought of something and took out another middle-grade spirit stone from a tattered storage bag. The guide boy was immediately as happy as before. After putting away the spirit stone, he skipped to the back of the alley. Not long after the guide boy left, a figure suddenly flashed in the alley where the guide boy had been lying. This person looked in the direction where the guide boy had left, then looked at the exit of the alley. He snorted and said, "The people from the overflowing sea gang are becoming more and more unscrupulous. If the Crystal Palace continues to indulge themselves, I'm afraid there will be forces that can't stand it and will come to teach them a lesson. After the figure walked back into the shadows and disappeared, a breeze blew through the alley. 3 cultivators with their faces covered in bamboo hats walked into the alley. When they arrived at the place where the guide boy had been, they paused for a moment and then walked into the depths of the alley. Lu Ping was currently standing in front of a stall. He was casually flipping through some of the items placed on the ground and bargaining with an early-stage core forging realm stall owner. After a while, it seemed that Lu Ping could not reach an agreement with the stall owner. He shook his head and stood up helplessly. He turned around and inadvertently glanced at a luxurious carriage not far away. It was this luxurious carriage that had suddenly stopped in front of a shop. Lu Ping did not care at first, but when the curtain of the luxurious carriage was lifted, he noticed something was wrong with it. So, he pretended to be interested in an item on the stall and began to bargain with the stall owner. After the luxurious carriage stopped, a cultivator in linen clothes came down from the carriage. This cultivator in linen clothes also looked well-dressed, but he stood humbly beside the luxurious carriage. Then, he led the young man in linen clothes, who had a better bearing than him, out of the carriage. Then, the two of them walked into the shop one after another. However, Lu Ping gradually frowned. Shang Wanhao, why is he here? Didn't this person escape to the Middle Earth through his family's secret teleportation array before the green sea snakes exterminated his family? The young man in linen clothes next to him seems to have a much higher status than him, but I don't know who he is. Is he an extraordinary person from the Middle Earth? Shang Wanhao was the Shang Wanhao who set up a trap in Qianyuan City to kill Lu Ping to vent his anger. After Lu Ping found out about it, with the help of Sam Ling, he blocked the attack of Shang Wanhao, a core forging stage cultivator. In the end, he attracted the attention of the Northern Alliance cultivators in Qianyuan City and had to retreat. However, Shang Wanhao recognized Sam Ling's identity as the Green Sea Snake during the battle. Although the Shangguan family was later exterminated by the Green Sea Snakes, Shang Wanhao escaped alone. This time, he returned to the East Sea. Although he did not know that the alchemist Lu Jiu was the current Lu Xianping, the name of the alchemist Lu Jiu was still there. If Shang Wanhao leaked the news of the Green Sea Snakes, the Shangguan family's fate would be the same as that of the Listening Waves Island. This person cannot be left alive. Chapter 505. After the luxurious carriage left, Lu Ping slowly walked to the shop's entrance. When he looked up, he was stunned. Previously, Lu Ping had been focusing all his attention on Shang Wanhao and the young man in luxurious clothes, so he didn't notice that the shop in front of him was decorated so magnificently. Moreover, the huge area of the shop clearly told the passers-by that this shop was one of the best in the entire Phantom Spirit City. The shop was a 3-story pavilion. The big plaque at the front door had 3 words that Lu Ping couldn't be more familiar with: Multi-Treasure Pavilion. When Lu Ping cultivated to the late blood refining realm, the first magic tool he bought was the landslide from the Multi-Treasure Pavilion. The Multi-Treasure Pavilion that stood in the market of Zhenling Courtyard obviously couldn't be compared to the magnificent Multi-Treasure Pavilion in front of him. However, the 2 multi-treasure pavilions had too many similarities. The architectural style was similar, and the words on the plaque in front of the door were the same. Lu Ping's expression changed. Lu Ping had been to Zhenling Courtyard's multi-treasure pavilion several times. Although the quality of the items sold there was high, there was nothing special about them. Therefore, it didn't attract too much attention from Lu Ping. However, after Lu Ping saw the multi-treasure pavilion in front of him, he knew that things weren't that simple. Lu Ping stepped into the multi-treasure pavilion. Immediately, a shop assistant greeted him and said, "Senior, please go upstairs." Lu Ping asked curiously, "Why do you want me to go upstairs as soon as I come here?" The shop assistant smiled and said, "Senior, I'm afraid you rarely come to our multi-treasure pavilion. Senior is a core forging realm cultivator, and the items on the first floor are mostly prepared for blood condensation realm cultivators. I'm afraid you won't like them." After listening to the shop assistant's introduction, Lu Ping was a little interested. As he followed the shop assistant upstairs, he asked, "This is interesting. I see that this pavilion is divided into 3 floors. Is the 3rd floor only for Fa Xiang Laozu?" Although the shop assistant was only a blood condensation realm cultivator, it was obvious that he often came into contact with core forging realm cultivators. He was not the slightest bit reserved in his speech. He replied, "Senior, that's right. The 3rd floor mostly contains items that only Fa Xiang Laozu would be interested in." Lu Ping went up to the 2nd floor and saw that the 2nd floor wasn't as crowded as the 1st floor. The floor was about 100 feet in length and width, and there were many items displayed on display. There were also a dozen core forging realm cultivators browsing through the items or asking the multi-treasure pavilion staff about something. Lu Ping's arrival didn't attract much attention from these cultivators. Lu Ping scanned the items on the 2nd floor with his divine sense. He was secretly amazed by the multi-treasure pavilion's strength. It really lived up to its name. The east wall of the large room was filled with various kinds of mystic treasures. There were about 40 to 50 of them, and Lu Ping could clearly see the glowing mystic treasures on the surface of the mystic treasures. They were all spirit-connected mystic treasures. On the south wall were rows of pills stored in jade crystal bottles. Every 3 bottles of the same pills were placed in a small compartment, and the name and effects of the pills were written on them. In total, there were 50 to 60 small compartments, which meant there were 50 to 60 different kinds of pills for core forging realm. There were 3 bottles of each kind. There were all kinds of talismans on the west wall, and each talisman was stored in a spirit sealing box. The box had the name and use of the talisman written on it. However, after Lu Ping reached core forging realm, because of his abundant true essence, he rarely ran out of talismans. He also quickly mastered several spells and spells, so he rarely used talismans. The northern side had the most artifacts, and the variety was also the most diverse. However, it was not messy. On the contrary, it was arranged in a picturesque manner. In the center of the large room, there was a huge 4-sided display table. It took up a quarter of the entire pavilion, and there were many jade slips on it. All of these items were confined to the display shelves by restrictions. Unless a cultivator from the multi-treasure pavilion removed the restrictions, others could only look at them. Lu Ping said from the bottom of his heart, "Your pavilion is indeed strong. Worthy of the name multi-treasure." The shop assistant smiled and didn't have much of a reaction. Obviously, he had heard this kind of praise many times. At this time, Lu Ping suddenly asked, "I have traveled to the North Sea and have seen a few multi-treasure pavilions there. Could it be that your pavilion is also one of them?" The shop assistant smiled and said, "North Sea? I'm not too sure about that. I am only a shop assistant here, and I don't know much about this pavilion." Lu Ping saw that the shop assistant was being perfunctory, so he didn't ask any more. However, he naturally had a plan in mind. Whether it was the Overflowing Seas gang, the Liao clan, or this multi-treasure pavilion, although the North Sea was barren, the cultivation world had never forgotten about it. However, seeing that the treasures in the multi-treasure pavilion were so complete, he also asked, "Does the boudoir also sell spiritual items?" The shop assistant smiled and said, "Our pavilion does sell spiritual items, but because spiritual items are rare, we don't have any in stock. Usually, a senior cultivator would place an order with us, and once we have a supply, we would notify someone to come and collect it." "Oh." Lu Ping nodded and said, "Even so, it can be seen that your pavilion is indeed incomparable to ordinary people." Lu Ping stood in front of the display table and admired a few more spirit-connected mystic treasures. He was especially interested in the 2 spirit-connected flying swords. However, he already had the golden scale sword, so he didn't need the other flying swords for the time being. Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Does the boudoir have a psychic treasure restriction for flying swords?" Seeing that there was a business to be done, the smile on the shop assistant's face immediately brightened. He said, "Of course we do, but what kind of psychic treasure restriction does Senior need?" Lu Ping didn't even think about it and said, pure water attribute, the higher the quality of the restriction, the better. Spirit stones are not a problem. The shop assistant thought for a moment and said, wait a moment. Then he walked to the side. A moment later, a late core forging cultivator came out of nowhere and said with a smile, honored guest, do you need a psychic treasure restriction for flying swords? Lu Ping nodded and said, that's right. The cultivator led Lu Ping to the central side of the display tower and made a few hand seals. The restriction on the surface of the tower shook and 3 jade slips flew out from the display tower and fell into the cultivator's hand. Lu Ping took a jade slip from the cultivator's hand and swept it with his divine sense. He said with regret, unfortunately, the psychic treasure restriction recorded in this jade slip has already been used by me. The cultivator didn't seem surprised and handed the second jade slip to Lu Ping. After Lu Ping swept it with his divine sense, he still frowned and said, although this psychic treasure restriction is of the water attribute, the runes on it are too shallow. I think its power is limited. Flying swords only seek to kill, so this psychic treasure restriction is not suitable. The cultivator nodded and handed over the last jade slip. He said, you really are an expert swordsman. See if this psychic treasure restriction is suitable. If it is still not suitable, you can place an order with our pavilion. We can take a few days to collect the psychic treasure restriction you need. Once there is news, we will inform you as soon as possible. Lu Ping nodded. After sweeping the psychic treasure restriction with his divine sense, his face lit up. After carefully looking at it again, a trace of joy finally appeared on his face. He said, this psychic treasure restriction is suitable. I want it. How much is this psychic treasure restriction worth? The cultivator smiled and said, it depends on how you want to buy it. Lu Ping was startled. He smiled and said, I'd like to hear the details. The cultivator replied, if Sire is willing to purchase it with spirit stones, then the price will be 80 high-grade spirit stones. However, Sire seems to have a sword technique psychic treasure on you. If Sire can take out one that my bountiful treasures pavilion doesn't have, then we can exchange it and Sire can save 80 high-grade spirit stones. You should know that the trade fair is about to begin, and only high-grade spirit stones can be used to trade. 80 high-grade spirit stones should be quite a fortune for Sire. Lu Ping naturally understood what the other party was thinking, but he was secretly amazed by the multi-treasure pavilion's wealth. Over the years, the multi-treasure pavilion had amassed countless treasures, cultivation techniques, pellet recipes, and inheritances in the cultivation world. Only a handful of sects in the entire cultivation world could match up to the multi-treasure pavilion. Unfortunately, the 2 psychic treasure restrictions on Lu Ping's golden scale sword were collected by the multi-treasure pavilion. In desperation, Lu Ping could only use another psychic treasure restriction and 20 upper-grade spirit stones to exchange for this psychic sword treasure restriction from the cultivator. The psychic treasure restriction that Lu Ping used to exchange for the golden scale sword was obtained by the Green Sea Sage. Unfortunately, this psychic treasure restriction was not suitable for sword techniques. Because of its tyrannical attack power, it was relatively rare and expensive compared to other treasure restrictions of the same grade. In desperation, Lu Ping had to add another 20 upper-grade spirit stones to exchange for this psychic sword treasure restriction from the multi-treasure pavilion. After Lu Ping came out of the multi-treasure pavilion, he already had another psychic treasure restriction and several mid- and late-core forging pill recipes. In addition to the psychic treasure restriction that Lu Ping exchanged for with 60 upper-grade spirit stones, the 3 mid- and late-core forging pill recipes were exchanged for by Lu Ping using several pill recipes that the multi-treasure pavilion didn't have. However, what made Lu Ping the happiest was the psychic treasure restriction that he had exchanged 60 upper-grade spirit stones for. This was because this psychic treasure restriction was completely suitable for Landslide. Landslide was originally Lu Ping's most tyrannical magic tool when he was in the blood condensation realm. It was also his favorite magic tool. Unfortunately, Landslide was a magic tool with dual attributes of metal and water. Moreover, under Lu Ping's deliberate modification, the water attribute within it had greatly increased. After Landslide condensed 3 ordinary psychic treasure restrictions, it was difficult to find a matching one. This caused Landslide to be unable to advance to the psychic treasure level, and its power was unable to increase. Gradually, in Lu Ping's hands, it lost its previous usefulness. However, Lu Ping didn't expect the multi-treasure pavilion to have such a dual elemental spirit treasure. Not only that, the water elemental spirit treasure had an obvious advantage over the water elemental spirit treasure. This made Lu Ping inwardly marvel at the multi-treasure pavilion's strength. Originally, Lu Ping wanted to ask if the multi-treasure pavilion still had a psychic treasure restriction similar to the invisible flying sword. However, Lu Ping changed his mind. Every time he asked, it meant that his methods would be exposed in front of others. So, he suppressed the thought in his heart and returned to the Immortal's Cave. When Lu Ping arrived at the Immortal's Cave, he discovered that everyone had already returned. The atmosphere inside the Immortal's Cave was somewhat heavy. So, he asked Second Senior Sister, Li Xianru, Senior Sister, what happened? Second Senior Sister's complexion was also somewhat ugly. She said, after that person came back, he sent out a thunderbolt for no reason. Even Martial Uncle Xian Su and Xian Sen's faces didn't look good. Chapter 506. Lu Ping curiously asked, Senior Martial Sister, do you know the reason? Li Xuanru said with uncertainty, I heard that today, there are cultivators frantically buying spirit herbs in Fantasy Spirit City. Moreover, they are buying spirit herbs that are over 1,000 years old. They spent millions of spirit stones, causing the price of spirit herbs in Fantasy Spirit City to increase by 10%. Lu Ping was stunned for a while. Li Xuanru saw that Lu Ping was in a daze and thought that Lu Ping didn't understand, so she said, the cultivation resources of our North Sea sects are already scarce, and it's rare for us to encounter this kind of gathering that only happens once in 100 years. Therefore, every time there is an opportunity to participate in this kind of gathering, the cultivators of the North Sea sects will spend a lot of spirit stones to buy all kinds of rare resources. Only then did Lu Ping regain his composure, but he still asked curiously, how many spirit stones does our sect spend to buy spirit herbs? But even so, it shouldn't be to the extent of angering the dignified Laozu. Of course it's not just that. A voice came over, and enlightened Master Xian Sen walked in from outside the cave with a very ugly expression. After Li Xuanru and Lu Ping stood up to greet each other, Lu Ping chuckled and asked, what Martial Uncle said just now, is there any other reason? Enlightened Master Xian Sen glanced at him and said, do you know how many spirit stones our sect spends to buy the spirit herbs gathered in Fantasy Spirit City during this kind of gathering? Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, and with a trace of embarrassment that was hard to detect, he smiled and said, since it's our sect doing it, it should be at least 5 million spirit stones. At this time, enlightened Master Xian Su also walked out from Tian Qin Laozu's cave and said with a gloomy expression, 5 million? 15 million. If it weren't for the fact that the 4 great sects of the North Sea would be buying spirit herbs wantonly during these 7 days, our sect might have spent even more spirit stones. At this time, Daoist Master Xian Tian and the others also heard Daoist Master Xian Su and Daoist Master Xian Sen's conversation with Lu Ping's group. Out of curiosity, they also walked over. Daoist Master Xian Tian said thoughtfully, so that's how it is. It's no wonder that martial uncles are so angry. That person's actions cost our sect 5 million spirit stones. I'm afraid even a late-stage core forging cultivator wouldn't have this much wealth. Daoist Master Xian Su unhappily glared at Daoist Master Xian Tian and said, it's not just 5 million, the trading fair will last for 7 days, after which the price of spirit grasses will rise again. At that time, it will be just these few spirit stones. Daoist Master Xiansen also said, originally, the sects of the North Sea had a tacit understanding to secretly buy spirit grasses from the city. This way, it wouldn't be easy to attract the attention of the shops that supply spirit grasses. Even though the price of spirit grasses rose as the trading fair neared its end, the increase was still limited. Now that someone has stirred up the situation, the original tacit understanding between the sects has been broken. I'm afraid that each sect will go their own way, lest they end up with nothing in the end. Tomorrow, not only me and senior brother Xian Su, but also all of you must do your best to buy all the spirit grasses. After Taoist Master Xian Sun finished speaking, he took out a few storage pouches from his body and tossed one to each person. Lu Ping received the storage pouch that was tossed to him and opened it. There were 2 neat piles of spirit stones inside. One pile had a total of 10,000 mid-grade spirit stones, while the other had 500,000 low-grade spirit stones. The entire storage pouch contained a total of 1.5 million spirit stones. If Taoist Master Shen-Tian, second senior sister, and the rest of them were the same as Lu Ping, then the 8 of them would have 12 million spirit stones in their hands. At this time, Taoist Master Xian Su sighed and said, in the past, the sect would at most spend 10 million spirit stones to buy spirit grasses. Now that there is a large spirit stone mine in the North Sea and our sect has secretly occupied a medium-sized spirit stone mine, we originally wanted to be rich and imposing this time and take out an extra 5 million to buy spirit grasses. However, we encountered this matter, so let's all do our best. However, when buying spirit grasses, don't fall behind. Although there are dozens of Dharma adept Laozu in this fantasy spirit city, there are many demons and humans mixed in the city. The water is very deep. Lu Ping put away the storage pouch and thought for a moment before asking, Martial Uncle, the loss of millions of spirit stones is indeed distressing, but it shouldn't be enough to make an existence like Tianqin Laozu so angry. What exactly is the matter? Lu Ping knew that as a third-generation disciple, it was indeed inappropriate for him to ask such a question, but his status in the sect was not much lower than Taoist Master Xian Sen's, so he already had the right to know the sect's secrets. So, he sighed and said, today, Senior Sister Tianqin saw Xian Ling sect's Daoxian Laozu together with Crystal Palace's Yuan Guang Laozu at the Fantasy Spirit Pavilion. The Fantasy Spirit Pavilion has already announced that this time, Xian Ling's sect will be promoted from the 3rd tier to the 2nd tier among the 25 medium-sized sections. Lu Ping's face turned cold. The 2 large spirit stone mines in the Fallen Secret Land were originally occupied by the 25 medium-sized sects in the overseas cultivation world. These 25 medium-sized sects were divided into 5 tiers according to their strength, and each tier had a different share of the spirit stone mines. Originally, Xian Ling's sect and Jinling were ranked 12th and 14th among the 25 medium-sized sections. They were both in the 3rd tier, and each had a share of 4% of the spirit stone mines. However, in the past 100 years, Xian Ling's sect's strength had not increased much. Although they had gained Feng Shutao, they had also lost Dao Kong, and now Dao Shi was seriously injured. From the looks of Dharma Laozu, Xian Ling's sect seemed to have regressed. If the rankings were to be rearranged, Xian Ling's sect would not be able to enter the top 10 among the 25 medium-sized sections. It would be lucky if they could even maintain their current position. On the contrary, Jinling had made great progress in the past 100 years. Not only had Tian Kong and Laozu advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, but they had also gained Tian Lin, Tian Ling, and Tian Qin, the 3 Dharma Laozu practitioners. With their strength, it was only natural for them to enter the 2nd tier and take 5% of the spirit stone mines. If it was not for the fact that Jinling did not have a late Dharma Laozu, it would be reasonable for them to enter the top 5 and take 6% of the spirit stone mines. In the past, Jinling would have to fight and compromise to advance to the 2nd tier, but with their strength, it would not be a big problem. However, this time, Xian Ling's sect, with the support of the Crystal Palace, had joined the fray. This was not a good thing for Jinling. If 2 sects from the North Sea applied to advance at the same time, it would inevitably give the sects from the East and South Seas a sense of aggressiveness. If things went wrong, the sects might end up with no one being able to advance. If that happened, Xian Ling's sect would not suffer any losses. They did not have the qualifications to advance in the first place, but Jinling would suffer a great loss. Even if only one sect advanced in the end, with the support of the Crystal Palace, Xian Ling's sect would most likely be able to push Jinling away and enter the 2nd tier. In this way, no matter what, Xianling's sect would not lose. On the other hand, Jinling would most likely gain nothing in this gathering of all the sects and clans in the overseas training world. No wonder when Tianqin Laozu saw Daoxian Laozu and Yuanguang Laozu entering and exiting the illusionary spirit chamber together, and then heard the news, he was so shocked and angry. In fact, the reason why Tianxiang Laozu had given the opportunity to represent Jinling in this grand gathering to Tianqin Laozu, other than the fact that his own cultivation had indeed reached the late Dharma stage and he was unwilling to go out, was that he wanted to use this opportunity of Jinling rising from the third tier to the second tier to give the credit to Tianqin Laozu, so that Tianqin Laozu could return to Jinling with a halo. How could Tianqin Laozu not know about Tianxiang Laozu's good intentions? But Xianling's sect, with the support of the Crystal Palace, suddenly came out to disrupt the situation. This made Tianqin Laozu furious, but there was nothing he could do. However, what the people in Jinling did not know was that at this time, Xianling's sect's Daoxian Laozu and Crystal Palace's Yuanguang Laozu were also at their wits' end. After a long time, Daoxian Laozu let out a long sigh and said, "Tianxiang is really good. I didn't expect that he could make Mei Xianqin return to Jinling at this time. Isn't he afraid that Mei Xianqin and Lu Tianling will fight and destroy his Jinling?" Although Yuanguang Laozu really did not care about the fights between these small sects in the North Sea, Xianling's sect was an important chess piece for the Crystal Palace to conquer the North Sea. Therefore, he said helplessly, "This time, it is indeed beyond our expectations. Not only does Jinling have 4 mid-Dharma adepts, but it also has 9 adepts in the Dharma stage. With such strength, if it still cannot be promoted to the second tier among the medium-sized sects, it will be too unjustifiable." Daoxian Laozu asked a little unwillingly, "Friend Yuanguang, even if your sect intervenes, can't it stop Jinling from advancing? Jinling has been rising too quickly these years. If the benefits from these 2 large spiritual minds increase, then I am afraid the gap between our sect and Jinling will only get bigger and bigger." Yuanguang Laozu replied with some dissatisfaction, "The most fundamental reason for the rise of a sect is still the sect itself. External interference can only play a role in hindering it. In this grand event, the Crystal Palace still has to deal with the provocation of the boudoir on the large spiritual minds, so we have no time to care about other things. Moreover, this is originally a medium-sized sect's matter. If the Crystal Palace interferes too much, it will inevitably cause resentment among the other sections." Hearing Yuanguang Laozu's words, Daoxian Laozu couldn't help but feel a little dejected. Yuanguang Laozu was secretly a little disdainful, but he still said, "But don't worry, friend. Although this time Jinling's advancement to a second-class sect cannot be changed, our sect will still try our best to support your sect's advancement. In this way, at least your sect's foundation will not be much weaker than Jinling's. It's just that, fellow Taoist profound, although my water crystal palace is powerful, it is also a tall tree that attracts the wind. Whether or not you can completely suppress Jinling's sect and make your sect the overlord of the North Sea, ultimately depends on your sect's own efforts." When Daoxian Laozu heard that the Crystal Palace had already promised to fully help Xianling's sect to advance to a second-class sect, he was already overjoyed. He smiled and said, "Friend Daoxian, please rest assured. With the help of your sect, my martial nephew Lin Xuqing will advance to the Dharma phase within these 2 years. Martial nephew Lu Shuheng is also about to condense a 7th-grade golden core. By then, our sect will definitely regain the upper hand in the North Sea." Yuanguang Laozu wanted to point out that if it wasn't for the help of the Crystal Palace, it would probably take another 100 years to advance to the Dharma phase. But after thinking about it, he didn't say it in the end. The next day, Lu Ping carried the 1.5 million spiritual stones given by Jinren Xiansen to carry out the task of purchasing spiritual herbs for his sect. Just as he left the cave abode, a sound transmission sword fell from the sky. Lu Ping held the sword in his hand and scanned it with his divine thoughts. His face instantly lit up. Chapter 507. Lu Ping received a sound transmission sword. Yin Xianchu and Qi Lianying had arrived. At the city gate of Phantom City, Lu Ping looked at the woman standing next to Yin Xianchu. She was charming and dignified, two completely different temperaments, yet perfectly fused together. Who else could it be but Qi Lianying? Lu Ping blinked and asked in disbelief, Qi Lianying? Qi Lianying winked at Lu Ping and said, "What's wrong, little Lu? How many years has it been since we last met? Don't you recognize me?" Lu Ping laughed and said, "How could I? Which man could forget a beauty like you?" Qi Lianying smiled sweetly and said, "Is that so? I heard that you've accumulated a large amount of property in the Northern Sea, but you've handed it over to your confidant to manage. You're acting like a man taking care of the outside and a woman taking care of the inside. It's truly enviable. Little Lu, you've become such a flowery talker after leaving your confidant. Big sister really looks down on you." Lu Ping was really not good at dealing with this kind of situation. He waved his hand and was about to say something when he saw Qi Lianying's face. He frowned and his eyes flickered with a green light. Qi Lianying wanted to tease Lu Ping when she saw him staring at her, but she was frightened by the green light in Lu Ping's eyes. She shivered and said, "Ah, why are you looking at me like that?" Lu Ping came to a realization and shook his head nonchalantly. He said, "It's nothing. I just remembered the task given to me by the sect. I have to complete it as soon as possible." Qi Lianying's beautiful eyes wandered. She naturally knew that Lu Ping was not being sincere, but she did not expose him. Instead, she asked curiously, "What task did your Zhenlin give you? Why are you so worried?" Lu Ping led the two away as he said, "It's nothing. He just wants me to spend all the 1.5 million spiritual stones I have as soon as possible." Qi Lianying giggled and said, "There's such a good thing. I'm the best at spending spiritual stones. Take out your spiritual stones. I'll spend them all in one day." Lu Ping was shocked and said, "That won't do. These spiritual stones can only be used to buy spiritual herbs. They can't be spent on anything else." Lu Ping had spent 2 million spiritual stones in less than half a day yesterday, raising the price of spiritual herbs in the entire Phantom City by 10%. Why would he worry about spending 1.5 million spiritual stones? Actually, it was not that Lu Ping's 2 million spiritual stones were too much. No matter how many spiritual stones he had, how much could he do in the Phantom City? The problem was that Lu Ping had spent the 2 million spiritual stones too fiercely. Every time he entered a shop, he would want nothing more than to empty out all the 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs in the shop. This way, it would be hard for him not to attract attention. If Lu Ping had used the same method as enlightened Master Xian Su and the others, buying a little less each time and visiting a few more shops, or changing his identity before visiting again, he would have bought quite a lot of spiritual herbs in the end and wouldn't have attracted the attention of the spiritual herb shops. Miser! Qi Lianying muttered in dissatisfaction. Then, she threw a storage pouch into Lu Ping's hand and said, "These are some of the savings we've accumulated over the years. I heard from your junior brother Ian that you've been in urgent need of high-grade spiritual stones recently, so aside from spiritual herbs, you've exchanged everything inside for high-grade spiritual stones." Only when he was with Lu Ping, Ji Xianxian, and the others would he be able to speak freely. If there was anyone else present, he would usually have a cold expression that kept strangers away. Lu Ping took out all the spiritual herbs in the storage pouch, then handed it back and shook his head. "The more spiritual herbs I have, the better. It's just that you've been in charge of Hearing Surf Island all these years. You should take these spiritual stones back and use them for your cultivation." Hee hee. Qi Lianying smiled mischievously. "Don't worry. You haven't been on the island all these years and I've long gotten used to acting like a tyrant. Whenever there's something good on Hearing Surf Island, doesn't it go through me first? If you don't return soon, I'm afraid your subordinates, Hongying, Yi Buki, and Wu Yan, won't even remember you as their master." Lu Ping smiled and no longer held back. He took the 200 high-grade spiritual stones from the storage pouch and put them into his own storage ring. "That's fine. I do need a lot of high-grade spiritual stones right now. These 200 spiritual stones can be considered timely help. Qi Lianying pursed her lips in disdain. You're such a hypocrite. I really thought you were going to return the spiritual stones to me. No, this time I have a few abilities that I need to cultivate, and I just happen to need a lot of heavenly treasures. The responsibility of paying the spiritual stones will fall on you. Also, you will need to refine dozens of batches of medicinal pills for my cultivation. Yu Jiangrui's cultivation will no longer be able to progress further, so he won't be able to refine mid-core forging medicinal pills. These things will fall on you, little Lu. The corner of Lu Ping's eyes twitched. He glanced at Qi Lianying and saw her grinning at him. Lu Ping knew that as long as he gave an excuse, Qi Lianying would have already thought of countless reasons to refute him. So he simply said, fine. With yesterday's lesson, Lu Ping changed his method. The three of them took turns buying spiritual herbs from dozens of shops. Each time, they bought 7 or 8 spiritual herbs. In one day, they only spent 500,000 spiritual stones. They bought 7 to 800,000-year-old spiritual herbs, as well as several precious 500-year-old and 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. As night fell, Qi Lianying complained, after walking for a day, my legs are about to break. Lu Ping was amused. When cultivators cultivated, the spiritual energy would automatically cleanse their bodies. At their level, even if they dispersed their cultivation base, their bodies would still be invincible. How could they possibly feel tired? It was most likely because Qi Lianying was annoyed by Lu Ping's lack of freedom and wanted to move on his own. Sure enough, Qi Lianying said, little Lu, I don't have the strength to walk around with you tomorrow. Don't blame me for being disloyal. Let me rest for a day first. Lu Ping nodded with a smile. Qi Lianying, on the other hand, did not feel ashamed at all for being seen through. Lu Ping suddenly said, Martial Aunt Tianqin is a senior of our sect. I believe junior martial brother Yin has already told you. Don't you want to see her and senior martial sister Zhu Xianmeng? After all, they have been taking care of you since you lost your memory. Qi Lianying's playful attitude was swept away and her expression became serious. Forget it, I won't go. Otherwise, both sides will be unhappy. I have been on Soundwave Island all these years. If I wanted to see them, I would have seen them long ago. Why would I wait until now? Lu Ping nodded as expected and said, but you still have to return to the North Sea with me in the end. Your cultivation has improved quite a bit over the years, and it looks like your strength isn't much inferior to my junior martial brother Yin's. I'm afraid you've already remembered many things in your heart, and it's time to unravel your story. Qi Lianying hesitated for a moment, then nodded solemnly and said, all right, I will go back to the North Sea with you. These years, I often remember some things, but they are all before and after I lost my memory. I can't remember anything else. Right now, I only know that I was captured by the Overflowing Seas gang. They wanted to ask me something I didn't know, but they didn't believe me. In the end, a core forging stage cultivator searched my soul. I don't remember anything after that. So these years, aside from managing Soundwave Island, the only thing I have done is assassinate the cultivators of the Overflowing Seas gang. At the same time, I also know that the Overflowing Seas gang is just a hidden pawn of the Crystal Palace. Lu Ping also said in a low voice, these things will eventually come to light. Whether it is the Overflowing Seas gang or the Crystal Palace, even if their people line up for you to kill, how many can you kill? Besides, we can't afford to offend them right now. Plus, we have already aroused their vigilance. Last time, if junior martial brother Yin hadn't met my 3 senior martial sisters, I'm afraid even he would have lost his life. So, we must think of a way to settle this once and for all. Qi Lianying weakly waved his hand and said, all right. I understand what you're saying. I won't cause trouble for them anymore. After parting ways with Qi Lianying and Yin Xianchu, Lu Ping hurried back to his cave residence. At this moment, Lu Ping's face was filled with deep thought. Perhaps it was because Lu Ping's cultivation wasn't high enough in the past, but he didn't know that Qi Lianying's face had been altered by a secret technique. It wasn't until Lu Ping's divine sense, which was no weaker than a late core forging stage cultivator's divine sense, coupled with the 3 pure eyes and his increasingly proficient methods of breaking seals, that he was able to see through Qi Lianying's face at a glance. This secret technique was different from ordinary illusion techniques. Instead, it was a technique that changed a person's facial muscles and then completely sealed them with a spirit sealing technique. In other words, Qi Lianying's face that appeared before everyone's eyes was actually real and not an illusion created by a technique. However, when using this secret technique, Qi Lianying would inevitably suffer great pain. If Qi Lianying's cultivation couldn't surpass the person who used this secret technique, then in order to break the secret technique on Qi Lianying's face, one would need to find a cultivator with the same cultivation as the person who used the secret technique and who was proficient in breaking seals. Lu Ping didn't believe that with old ancestor Tianqin's cultivation base, he wouldn't be able to see through the disguise technique on Qi Lianying's face. He also didn't believe that with old ancestor Tianqin's cultivation base, he wouldn't be able to decipher the technique. Thinking of the cold relationship between ancestor Tianqin, Zhu Xianmeng, and Qi Lianying, the only possibility was that ancestor Tianqin was the one who used this secret technique. But why did Lyra Laozu do this? Was she trying to hide something? For a moment, Lu Ping's mind was in a mess. All kinds of guesses and thoughts seemed to surge into Lu Ping's mind endlessly. 9th junior brother. Lu Ping was startled. Only now did he realize that it was his second senior sister, Li Xuanru, who was calling him. Lu Ping looked up and didn't know when Lu Ping had already returned to the cave residence where everyone was staying. You look like you're in a hurry. Did something happen? Li Xuanru asked with concern. Lu Ping smiled carelessly and said, It's nothing. It's just that when I was buying spirit herbs today, I accidentally saw a female disciple of the Shuiyan Pavilion also buying spirit herbs. It seems that the other 3 sects of the North Sea are also fighting to buy spirit herbs. Chapter 508. After the second day of the trading event, Lu Ping and the other Zhenling disciples returned to the cave dwelling to gather everyone's harvest for the day. For the whole day, no one bought any spiritual herbs, and the total amount spent was only about 200,000 to 300,000 spirit stones. Only Lu Ping spent 500,000 spirit stones in one go. Lu Ping was a master alchemist, so his knowledge of spiritual herbs was naturally above everyone else's. Moreover, the spiritual herbs Lu Ping bought were obviously better than others in terms of age and quality. However, the reason why Lu Ping was able to buy spiritual herbs so quickly was because Lu Ping and the 2 of them took turns. This way, once Lu Ping had his eyes on a spiritual herb, the 3 of them would take turns to buy it. This way, the shopkeeper wouldn't be alerted. As everyone talked about what they saw and heard, Lu Ping found out that it wasn't just the Shuiyan Pavilion cultivators that he saw. The other senior brothers and sisters had also seen the Hai Yen sect and Xianling sect cultivators. Among them, the Xianling sect cultivators were the most extravagant when it came to buying spiritual herbs. Enlightened Master Xian Su said helplessly, Looks like we can't hide it anymore. Just like Xianling's sect, the price of spirit herbs in Phantom Spirit City is going to increase tomorrow. Although we have the most spirit herbs on us this time, we might not be able to buy much more than before. Spiritual Master Xiansun tidied up the 6,000 stalks of spiritual herbs and said, No matter what, tomorrow is the last day of the auction. We still have to go buy some spiritual herbs. Otherwise, the price of spiritual herbs will increase even more after the auction. I'll hand these spiritual herbs to senior sister Tianqin and let her take care of them. The next day, the price of spiritual herbs in Fantasy Spirit City increased by another 10%. Without Qi Lianying and Yin Xuanqu's help, Lu Ping's efficiency dropped by a lot. In a day, he only spent 300,000 to 400,000 spirit stones. This time, Lu Ping also saw 2 Xianling sect cultivators and 1 Hai Yen sect cultivator going in and out of a spiritual herb shop. Obviously, they were also making use of the time to buy spiritual herbs. Lu Ping's divine sense was far stronger than the three of them. Before the three of them noticed him, Lu Ping had already dodged them. Lu Ping stood in a hidden corner and watched a Xianling sect cultivator walk out of a spiritual herb shop. Just as Lu Ping was about to leave, his eyes lit up and he retracted his foot. At the intersection of a main street, two middle-aged cultivators were chatting as they walked along the street. At the same time, they were also casually browsing the things on both sides of the street. When the two of them arrived at the spirit herb shop that the Xianling sect cultivator had walked out from, one of them smiled and said something to the other. The other nodded and the two of them walked into the shop. Lu Ping rubbed his chin and thought to himself, this is interesting. The North Sea's Liao family's Liao Ruinjia is also here. Who is the person walking with him? That person's clothes and accessories are completely different from the North Sea cultivators. It seems that the Liao family is not simple. Lu Ping thought for a moment and walked straight to the shadow of a stone pillar beside the door of the shop. A moment later, Liao Ruinjia and the middle-aged cultivator walked out of the shop. Liao Ruinjia said, Brother Runjian, has the situation in Middle-earth really deteriorated to this extent? The middle-aged cultivator next to him nodded and said, this time, it came so suddenly that the major sects were caught off guard. However, these things will only give them a slight advantage in the beginning. As time passes, the major sects will launch a counterattack, and the advantage will fall back into the hands of the humans. Then, Brother Runjian, did you come to East Sea this time because you are confident about that thing? The middle-aged cultivator shook his head and said, it's difficult. Although our Liao family is quite familiar with that thing's habits, the Crystal Palace has a rough idea of where it is. This time, it's not just the overseas cultivators who came to Phantom City. As far as I know, there are 3 forces in Middle-earth who came to Phantom City. They are most likely here for that thing as well. Liao Ruinjia sighed and said, it's a pity that we didn't manage to kill that Crystal Palace cultivator last time. By the time Hu and the others arrived, the Overflowing Oceans Gang's secret transportation formation had already been destroyed. I'm afraid that person has already left. The middle-aged cultivator's expression changed and he said, could it be that someone else got the news and killed that person first? Liao Ruinjia's expression changed and he said, that can't be. Who else in North Sea knows about this? At least Xianling's sect probably knows. Liao Ruinjia's expression changed and he said, Brother Runjian, you mean? The middle-aged cultivator nodded and said, then why would Peng Shiyuan bring that thing to North Sea for no reason? Now that Xianling's sect and the Crystal Palace are in a heated relationship, Peng Shiyuan most likely wants to give that thing to Yuan Guang, and then Yuan Guang will give it to Xianling's sect. Liao Ruinjia said doubtfully, although Xianling's sect is a big sect in North Sea, if it wasn't for the Crystal Palace's ambition to rule over the overseas cultivators, they might not even care about a mid-sized sect like Xianling's sect. If the Crystal Palace needs that thing, they can just look for it themselves. Why would they need to involve Xianling's sect? The middle-aged cultivator said leisurely, when Fei Ling's sect was destroyed, the entire Fei Ling mountain was sunk to the bottom of the sea by a Dharma adept of Fei Ling's sect before he died. But I'm afraid no other sect in the entire North Sea has more of Fei Ling's sect's inheritance than Xianling's sect. Liao Ruinjia's eyes lit up and he said, that's right. After Fei Ling's sect was destroyed, Xianling's sect has been the strongest sect in North Sea for 4,000 years. It was only in the recent 100 years that Xianling gradually caught up. Brother Runjian, are you saying that Xianling's sect still has the inheritance of that thing? The middle-aged cultivator waved his hand and said, these things have been passed down in North Sea for more than 1,000 years. You should know better than me. But, something's not right. Someone is using divine sense to spy on us. The middle-aged cultivator's expression turned cold and he immediately stopped talking. At the same time, his eyes were like lightning as he looked around without leaving a trace. Liao Ruinjia clapped his hands as if nothing had happened. Lu Ping, who was hiding in the dark, clearly saw a light dust like dust being emitted when Liao Ruinjia clapped his hands. Lu Ping's eyes narrowed. It's the thought-dissolving powder. This was a type of poisonous powder that alchemists created in the process of refining pills to prevent others from spying on them. This kind of poisonous powder looked like dust. Even if a cultivator's divine sense didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to tell that it was different from ordinary dust. However, once a cultivator's divine sense invaded the surroundings of the thought-dissolving powder, the powder would quickly corrode the cultivator's divine sense like maggots in a tarsal bone and send a warning to the alchemist. This kind of thought-dissolving powder had a permanent effect on one's divine sense. Unlike true essence that could be recovered after being melted, it required a large amount of time to cultivate again in order to completely recover the melted divine sense. Fortunately, Lu Ping quickly withdrew his divine sense when the middle-aged cultivator was alerted. Otherwise, not only would Lu Ping's divine sense be severely injured, he would also likely expose his hiding place. The middle-aged cultivator looked around but found nothing. He turned to Liao Ruanjia and said, "Let's go. The intruder is very vigilant and has already retreated." The two of them no longer spoke and walked towards the east side of the street. A moment later, Lu Ping walked out from the shadow of the door pillar. Looking in the direction that the two of them had gone, Lu Ping touched the storage ring on his finger. The thing that Lu Ping couldn't figure out the most about Peng Xiuan was the incomplete map. Could it be that the treasure that Liao Ruanjia and the middle-aged cultivator were trying to obtain was the location recorded in the incomplete map? After returning to the cave abode, everyone increased their purchase of spirit herbs. Everyone spent roughly 500,000 spirit stones. Only Lu Ping alone spent 400,000 spirit stones. Seeing everyone's puzzled expressions, Lu Ping could only explain, "In the past 3 days, the quality of the spirit herbs in Fantasy Spirit City has obviously declined due to the large-scale purchase, so we only bought these." Everyone was speechless. Spiritual Master Xian Sen said unhappily, "These spirit herbs can't be bought in the North Sea even if we wanted to. Who cares about the quality now? Being able to buy them is the most important thing. Now, there are more and more sects buying spirit herbs in Fantasy Spirit City. It's not just the 4 sects of the North Sea, even people from the Azure Sea sect and the Azure Waves sect have come to the East Sea." At this moment, Tianqin Laozu walked out of the cave abode. She glanced at Lu Ping and said, "This time, Fantasy Spirit City is very strange. Everyone should be careful. Ever since the Azure Sea sect and the Azure Waves sect split up thousands of years ago, they have never been in contact with each other. The two sects even hate each other. This time, they actually appeared in Fantasy Spirit City together. I'm afraid things aren't that simple. Apart from that, some big sects and families from the Middle-earth seem to have also appeared in Fantasy Spirit City. This time, the overseas cultivation world's gathering won't be that simple. There are humans and demons mixed in Fantasy Spirit City now, so everyone must be careful. Fortunately, tomorrow is the auction. After the auction, we will leave Fantasy Spirit City in 2 days." When everyone saw how serious Tianqin Laozu was, they immediately felt that the atmosphere in Fantasy Spirit City was indeed a little strange these days. So, they all nodded in agreement. The next day, Lu Ping and the rest of the group followed behind Tianqin Laozu and walked towards the Fantasy Spirit Palace in the center of Fantasy Spirit City. The illusionary Spirit Palace was actually a huge grotto heaven mystic treasure. But according to enlightened Master Xian Su, this winter mystic treasure only had 2 enchantments. It was far inferior to the Heaven Origin Palace that Lu Ping had seen before. When they arrived at the center of the Fantasy Spirit Palace, a core forging cultivator immediately came to greet them. Tianqin Laozu took out the token that he had flashed at the Fantasy Spirit City gate. The core forging cultivator took the token and examined it before leading everyone to a teleportation array in the middle of the palace. After the teleportation array was activated and the light before them dissipated, they found themselves in a secret chamber. This secret chamber was luxuriously decorated and was filled with restrictive magic arrays. It seemed to be used to prevent others from prying into the secret chamber. Directly opposite the secret chamber was a huge venue. Cultivators began to enter the venue one after another. Every cultivator who entered was at least in the late core forging stage. Most of these cultivators covered their faces with bamboo hats, unwilling to reveal their identities. This secret chamber was exquisitely decorated. Everyone inside the secret chamber could see everything that was happening in the venue, but the people inside the venue could not pry into the movements inside the secret chamber. Chapter 509. Everyone had just sat down in the private room that looked like a secret room when on a stone table near the auction venue, a small but complicated array rune suddenly lit up. After a dazzling white light flashed, 11 steaming hot cups of spirit tea suddenly appeared on the stone table. There was actually a small teleportation array carved on the stone table. Lu Ping and the others clicked their tongues in wonder. Then, enlightened Master Xian Su explained with a smile, this small teleportation array is meant to make it easier for the guests in the private rooms to exchange their treasures after bidding. It also serves as a means of confidentiality. Sage Xian Tian heard this and said, confidentiality? Uncle Master, could it be that we came to this private room through the teleportation array or was it random? Sage Xian Su nodded in agreement. However, he saw Tian Qin Laozu suddenly stand up and make a series of hand signs. A net-like light of essential yuan in Tian Qin Laozu's hands became brighter and brighter. Then, she scattered it in all directions, and the light instantly stretched out into a huge net. It flew towards the four walls, roof, and floor of the private room, and then the light net flashed across the walls, roof, and floor. Sage Xian Sen was stunned and said, Senior sister, why is there someone spying on us in this private room? Tian Qin Laozu laughed coldly and said, this treasure doesn't belong to us, so how can we be sure? It's just a precautionary measure. If a mid-Dharma adept forcibly invades with his divine will, even this method of mine won't be able to stop him. At most, we will only know in advance. As soon as Tian Qin Laozu finished speaking, she saw Lu Ping suddenly stand up and open his hands. A small jade box suddenly appeared in his hands. Lu Ping walked to the side of the private room and carefully opened the jade box. Then, he used his mouth to gently blow into the box. A faint white fog rose up for less than half a foot before dissipating in the air. Then, they saw Lu Ping carefully blow out white fog towards the other three walls. Everyone did not know what was going on, but they knew that Lu Ping was also taking precautions against something. But since Tian Qin Laozu had already made a move, what could Lu Ping do? As expected, Sage Xian Su, who was at the side, had a slight hint of mockery and laughed. Junior brother Lu, Uncle Master Tian Qin has already made a move. What's the point of doing this? Isn't it superfluous? Sage Xian Su and Sage Xian Sen did not say anything, but their expressions showed that they were not happy with Lu Ping's actions. Usually, Lu Ping's actions were just a precaution, but now that Lu Ping's master was at odds with the person in front. If he did this now, what was it if not a provocation? Just as Master Xian Su and Master Xian Sen looked at the celestial Qin ancestor uneasily, they did not see any dissatisfaction in the celestial Qin ancestor's eyes. Instead, a sliver of surprise flashed past his eyes. Just as Sage Xian Su and Sage Xian Sen looked at each other, they heard Tian Qin Laozu suddenly say, Kid, where did you get your thought-dissolving powder? This thing is extremely vicious and has always been a secret of the Lu clan. This time, it is said that someone from the Lu clan has appeared in Phantom City. Be careful not to be silenced if you're discovered. Lu Ping had just scattered the thought-dissolving powder on the roof and floor of the private room when he heard Tian Qin Laozu's question. Lu Ping raised his head and said doubtfully, Lu clan. Isn't it the Liao clan? Tian Qin Laozu was taken aback by Lu Ping's doubtful expression and said, Kid, you still want to play dumb? What Liao clan? Didn't you get your thought-dissolving powder from the hands of the Lu clan? This time, Lu Ping thought of something and said with a smile, Uncle Master, you also said that this thought-dissolving powder is a secret of the Lu clan. How could a disciple get it from a cultivator from the Lu clan? Tian Qin Laozu looked at Lu Ping and felt that he wasn't lying. He didn't ask any more and looked outside the private room. At this time, the number of cultivators who had entered the auction hall had reached more than 200, and these 200 people were all at the late stage of core forging and above. The thought-dissolving powder that Lu Ping had on him was a pill recipe from Peng Shiyuan. Yesterday, after Liao Ruanjia used the thought-dissolving powder, Lu Ping remembered that when he killed Peng Shiyuan, he had obtained a few pill recipes from him that also had the method to refine the thought-dissolving powder. After Lu Ping went back, he took out the pill recipe for the thought-dissolving powder and had a look. Only then did he realize how overbearing this thought-dissolving powder was. Even the divine will of a transcendent stage cultivator would be corroded by the thought-dissolving powder when they were caught off guard. After Lu Ping saw this, his hands itched. Luckily, he had already obtained 4,000 to 5,000 stalks of spirit herbs. Although the process of refining this thought-dissolving powder was complicated, it wasn't difficult. Lu Ping took out the fire ring from the ice and fire rings from Lu Qiner's hands and drew out the dark prison poisonous fire inside to refine this thought-dissolving powder. It was half the effort and twice the result. That night, he refined this small box. He didn't expect that it would be put to use the next day. When Xian Su and spiritual master Xian Sen heard Tian Qin Laozu say that the treasure in Lu Ping's hands seemed to be useful and that it had a great background, they finally relaxed. At this moment, if one were to look up from the auction venue, they would discover that there were a total of 34 white clouds floating in the sky above the venue. On top of each white cloud, there was a simple and unadorned pavilion in the sky. At the same time, 23 of the 34 pavilions around the auction venue had already hung up red candles. This meant that 23 of the 25 medium-sized sects of the overseas cultivation world and the 9 large-sized sects, including the Crystal Palace and the Boudoir, had already arrived. Tian Qin Laozu unhurriedly lit up a red candle and placed it on the thin muslin window of the private room facing the auction venue. At this moment, the 24th sect had already arrived. At this moment, another 6 white clouds carrying 3 pavilions descended from the sky above the venue. This caused the number of pavilions and private rooms in the venue to increase to 40. The change in the sky above the venue naturally attracted the attention of the hundreds of cultivators who had entered the venue. Tian Qin Laozu and the others naturally saw the changes in their surroundings. Spiritual Master Xian Su asked Tian Qin Laozu, junior sister, "Do you know who these 6 additional pavilions belong to?" Tian Qin Laozu's expression was a bit solemn as she said, "They should be people from the Demon Clan and the Central Plains." The pavilions in the sky were lit up one by one and the venue was already more than half filled. At this moment, a clear bell rang and the door of the Fantasy Spirit Pavilion slowly closed. All the cultivators in the venue took their seats and a door appeared out of thin air at the front of the venue. A fat cultivator in his 50s walked out of the door with a smile. A Dharma adept. The host of this auction was actually a Dharma adept. The cultivator first laughed heartily and said, "The old man's surname is Dong. Everyone can call me Fatty Dong." The old man was originally a wandering cultivator from the Eastern Sea. This time, he was captured by a few old farts from the Fantasy Spirit City to host this auction. They said that the old man didn't belong to any sect and was the most fair. Everyone believed them. This is all bullshit. I came here because they promised to give me a considerable amount of top-grade spirit stones and elixirs as a reward after this is over. Dong Laozu's opening remarks made all the cultivators in the venue smile. The originally somewhat depressing atmosphere was immediately dispelled by Dong Laozu's words. Enough with the idle talk. For the sake of the spirit stones and pills, I will remind everyone here that the rules here have been explained before. The old man won't repeat them. What the old man wants to say is that behind the old man, in a corner that even the old man doesn't know about, are a few old farts older than the old man. So if you don't have the necessary confidence, don't behave atrociously in this venue, lest you become a warning to those old farts. Everyone in the hall smiled once more. However, everyone felt apprehensive in their hearts as well. When their divine perception stretched out, sure enough, they noticed a few exceedingly formidable auras faintly existing in the surroundings. When everyone wanted to further investigate their source, these auras flashed and vanished without a trace. Of course, this time, there are 6 more white clouds in the sky. Other than the 9 great sects and 25 forces, there are also the cultivators of the Eastern Seas Chu, Yan, Kong, and Ao families. The only one missing is the South Seas tyrannical turtle Xiang family. Even the number 1 family in Central Plains, the Yuan family, has arrived. In addition, there are also the cultivators of Central Plains' great sect, the Heavenly Moon sect. When everyone in the venue heard Dong Laozu's words, they all looked at the 40 pavilions floating in the air. However, these 40 pavilions completely isolated everyone's divine senses. They didn't know which pavilion the Yao clan cultivators were in, which pavilion the Middle-earth's Yuan family and Heavenly Moon sect cultivators were in. Okay, stop looking. Let's look at the old man's place first. At some unknown time, a jade table had been placed in front of Dong Laozu. There was a light purple box meticulously carved out of chalcedony. There were faint runes drawn all over the surface of the chalcedony box. Layers of light constantly flickered on and off the surface of the chalcedony box. Everyone in the venue was knowledgeable. Seeing that an item could be stored in a chalcedony box, the value was definitely not low. Dong Laozu pointed at the chalcedony box, and the changing runes on the surface of the box immediately extinguished. Dong Laozu slowly opened the jade box, and 3 white jade-like pills appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Dong Laozu chuckled and said, "Although I, Laozu, know that most of the people here are mid- or late-stage core forging cultivators, and this auction is also geared towards late-stage core forging cultivators, the old man also knows that there are many Dharma adepts hidden here. Not to mention, each of the 40 pavilions in the sky probably has at least 1 Dharma adept working as a nanny. Therefore, the old man decided to take this item first in order to win the jackpot." Dong Laozu paused for a moment before continuing, "1 flawless longevity pill can extend one's life by 10 years. Even though the medicinal properties of these 3 pills have been weakened, it is still enough to extend a cultivator's life by more than 25 years. According to the seller's request, these 3 flawless longevity pills will be auctioned together. The seller only asks for spirit stones, and the highest bidder wins. However, the seller also has a request, and that is, if there are top-grade spirit stones, they must be given priority. However, the old man still has to remind those who are participating in this auction for the first time not to bring out low-grade spirit stones. This auction will only accept treasures with high-grade spirit stones and above. The starting bid for these 3 flawless longevity pills will be 100 high-grade spirit stones. Alright, everyone can start bidding. Chapter 510. The longevity pill was one of the most precious pills in the cultivation world. As a pill that could extend one's life, there were several grades of longevity pills in the cultivation world. The lowest grade was the 1-year longevity pill. The better ones, such as the Vitality Dew that Lu Ping used to refine the minor forging spirit pill, were the 3 years longevity pills. Above that were the 5 years longevity pills and the 10 years longevity pills. Legend has it that in the cultivation world, there were even more legendary 15 years longevity pills and even 20 years longevity pills. However, the amount of heavenly materials and earthly treasures needed to create these pills was truly unimaginable. These longevity pills could only be inherited by the sects that had existed since the era of the 7th Patriarch in the Central Plains. In addition to those legendary longevity pills, the 10 years longevity pill could be said to be the most precious pill in the cultivation world. At any time, in the eyes of any cultivator, longevity pills were priceless treasures that were in short supply. In the blink of an eye, the price of the longevity pills had been raised to 150 high-grade spirit stones. However, the cultivators in the pavilions floating above the clouds were not very interested in the longevity pills. These sects did not have excellent alchemists and longevity pill recipes. For a sect, unless it was an emergency, they were more interested in the longevity pill recipe than a few longevity pills. Of course, for some sects that did not have a deep foundation, the value of 3 longevity pills that could extend one's life by more than 25 years was completely different in their eyes. Although the cultivators who were able to enter the auction today were all at the late core forging stage and above, there were also many cultivators who had reached the transcendence stage as rogue cultivators. This was especially true for some cultivators who were close to the end of their lifespan. Who could say that they would not be able to use the extra 25 years of lifespan to successfully break through and extend their lifespan? Even if they could not break through, being able to live for more than 20 years in this world was already very good. In the blink of an eye, the price of the 3 longevity pills had risen to 200 high-grade spirit stones. At this moment, an old voice suddenly came from a cultivator wearing a black cloak. Old man bids 2 top-quality spirit stones for these 3 longevity pills. As soon as the old man's voice came out, more than half of the cultivators in the auction hall who were originally ready to make a move suddenly stopped talking. Which of the cultivators present was not at the late stage of the core forging realm? Only Fa Xiang Laozu could call him old man in this situation. Sure enough, everyone's spiritual sense left the old man's body as soon as it came into contact with him. Even though the old man possessed a secret technique that prevented them from probing him, the feeling of a bottomless abyss still made them choose to be cautious. I also offer 2 pieces of Supreme Spirit Stones and 30 pieces of Upper Spirit Stones. One of the cultivators also covered his face, but he didn't hide his peak core forging cultivation. However, his aura was a bit weak. It was clear that he didn't have much lifespan left. He wanted to use these 3 longevity pills to prolong his life before risking his life to reach the Dharma phase. The old man in the black cloak looked in the direction of the cultivator. His old voice was emotionless as he opened his mouth and said, "Then 3 pieces of Supreme Spirit Stones it is." The cultivator opened his mouth but didn't say anything. Even though he could offer a higher price, it was obvious that this Dharma phase adept was also determined to get the longevity pills. Naturally, he wouldn't offend Dharma phase Laozu because of this. Moreover, there were definitely countless rare treasures in this auction. It was impossible that there would only be one type of longevity pill. After the longevity pills were successfully auctioned, Dong Laozu took out a jade box and opened it. Inside, there was a yellow stone. He said, "There aren't many cultivators overseas who practice earth-based cultivation methods, but there are even fewer earth-based heaven and earth treasures overseas. This Tsangwa stone is a mid-grade earth-level heaven and earth treasure. However, due to its scarcity, its value is 20% higher than other heaven and earth treasures of the same level. Therefore, this auction has set the starting price at 120 spirit stones. This Tsangwa stone was a good preparation for Debao in the future. However, Debao had just advanced to the 9th layer of the blood condensation realm not too long ago. Based on his cultivation speed, it would take him hundreds of years to reach the 6th layer of the core forging realm and advance to the late core forging realm. Naturally, Lu Ping lost interest in this Tsangwa stone. The appearance of the Tsangwa stone attracted a lot of cultivators in the auction hall. Even the 40 floating pavilions started to bid for it. However, earth-based heaven and earth treasures were much rarer than cultivators who practiced earth-based cultivation methods. Lu Ping had once heard from enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan that in order to obtain an earth-based low-grade heaven and earth treasure, enlightened Master Guoxian Shan, with the help of Tiankong Laozu, paid a huge price and buried it in a secret place overseas for nearly half a year before he was lucky enough to obtain it. By the time enlightened Master Guoxian Shan successfully returned to Jinling, his entire body had been drained of true essence. His body was emaciated, and the muscles in his legs had started to rot. His cultivation was almost destroyed. After that, he cultivated in seclusion on Tianling Mountain for 5 years and consumed the Bell Cauldron pill specially refined for him by Tianlu Laozu. In the end, the Tsangwa stone was auctioned for the price of 150 high-grade spirit stones and 2 top-grade spirit stones. Although the next few auction items were also rare items in the world of cultivation, none of the cultivators in Jinling were in urgent need of them. However, enlightened Master Shen Tian and the others were still watching with keen interest. With so many rare treasures appearing, it was normally impossible for them to have such an opportunity to broaden their horizons. Since the start of the auction, Tianqin Laozu had been sitting cross-legged in the innermost corner of the pavilion with his eyes closed. It seemed that he was not interested in any of the items in the auction hall. Although enlightened Master Xuanqiu and enlightened Master Xiansen were also paying attention to the appearance of one treasure after another in the auction hall, they were, after all, people with hundreds of years of cultivation and experience. Thus, their expressions did not change too much. Lu Ping simply split his attention into two parts. One part of his divine sense was used to pay attention to what was happening in the auction hall, while the other part of his divine sense began to take inventory of the items in his storage ring that could be used in this auction. Before Lu Ping was punished to suppress the earth fire, Tianqin Laozu had rewarded Lu Ping with 500 high-grade spirit stones through the sect. However, after 4 years of consumption, there were not many high-grade spirit stones left. Lu Ping's cultivation was different from that of ordinary people. Ordinary mid-stage core forging cultivators could use mid-grade spirit stones to support their cultivation. However, the North Sea wave listening technique that Lu Ping cultivated was too overbearing. Although Lu Ping's true essence was thick and vigorous, allowing him to fight against cultivators of the same level as him, it was because his true essence was too thick that it caused his cultivation to slow down. In order to improve his cultivation speed at the same rate as ordinary people, Lu Ping had no choice but to use high-grade spirit stones to barely achieve the goal of his cultivation. Thus, after Lu Ping came out from his seclusion, he focused his attention on the few treasure vaults of the Overflowing Seas sect that he had obtained from Soul Search 4 years ago. There were only 3 secret treasure vaults that Lu Ping knew of. With De Bao's help, Lu Ping successfully infiltrated 2 of the treasure vaults and looted all the treasures stored inside. However, after these 2 operations, the Overflowing Seas sect was finally alerted. When Lu Ping arrived at the 3rd treasure vault, he discovered that the Overflowing Seas sect had already increased their security. There seemed to be 3 to 4 core forging realm cultivators and a dozen blood condensation realm cultivators guarding the treasure vault. With no other choice, Lu Ping could only retreat. Even so, Lu Ping returned with a bountiful harvest. However, when he returned, Lu Ping was greatly disappointed. These so-called treasure vaults were actually built by the Overflowing Seas sect to store cultivation resources for blood condensation realm cultivators. Although there were a lot of cultivation resources inside, they were not of much use to core forging realm cultivators. When he thought about it, it made sense. Most cultivators had storage artifacts on hand. If it was not necessary, why would they build treasure vaults? Which core forging realm cultivator didn't have any secrets that could not be exposed to the public? They only believed in carrying their most precious treasures with them or places that only they knew about. At least, Lu Ping was like that. The only thing that comforted Lu Ping was that in these 2 treasure vaults, the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas sect, for some unknown reason, had placed 2 storage pouches filled with high-grade spirit stones. Each storage pouch was neatly stacked with 500 high-grade spirit stones. The 2 storage pouches contained a total of 1,000 high-grade spirit stones. This made Lu Ping's slightly vexed mood instantly turn into joy. With 1,000 high-grade spirit stones in hand, Lu Ping could maintain this extremely luxurious cultivation method for another 7 to 8 years. As for the remaining low-level cultivators' cultivation resources, it gave Lu Ping a headache for a while. In the end, he roughly categorized these items and sent a portion of them to the Pill Pavilion. Unfortunately, Fornax Laozu was not at Tianling Mountain at that time. With great difficulty, Lu Ping managed to dig out 150 high-grade spirit stones from enlightened Shen Dian. Then, he sent a portion of the spiritual materials to the crafting hall and directly paid a visit to Tianjiang Laozu. Tianjiang Laozu was generous and directly threw him 200 high-grade spirit stones. As for the remaining items, Lu Ping thought about it and went to find enlightened Shen Yuan of Zhenling Side Hall. Lu Ping knew that as the mountainhead of Zhenling Side Hall, enlightened Shen Yuan also had a large amount of spirit stones in his hands. Unfortunately, although enlightened Shen Yuan coveted the resources in Lu Ping's hands, he did not have any high-grade spirit stones. Helpless, Lu Ping could only exchange for 1 million low-grade spirit stones. Then, together with the 1 5 million low-grade spirit stones that he had previously accumulated. He wantonly bought 1,000-years-old spirit herbs after arriving at Fantasy Spirit City. In just half a day, he had squandered 2 million low-grade spirit stones. After that, with the 200 high-grade spirit stones that Qi Lianying gave him and Lu Ping's own, right now, Lu Ping had about 1,700 high-grade spirit stones that he could squander. In addition, Lu Ping also had 4 top-grade spirit stones that he kept close to him. This was one of his most precious treasures. Just as Lu Ping was thinking about what he needed, the small transmission array on the jade table in front of Dong Laozu suddenly lit up, and then 3 jade slips appeared on top of it. Dong Laozu looked at the 3 jade slips and suddenly said with a smile, "These 3 jade slips record 3 psychic treasure prohibitions." Originally, although psychic treasure prohibitions are precious, to be able to be auctioned at this auction, even if all 3 of them are sold together, it would still be a bit difficult. However, these 3 psychic treasure prohibitions are extraordinary. Dong Laozu deliberately kept everyone's attention in suspense. After attracting everyone's attention, he said, "I believe that everyone present has heard of Fei Ling's sect, one of the 9 great sects in the past. However, Fei Ling's sect also passed down a set of invisible sword technique. I'm afraid that not many of you here know about it." Chapter 511. As soon as Dong Laozu's voice fell, the previously calm Lu Ping suddenly opened his eyes. His divine sense rushed out of the pavilion towards the 3 jade slips in front of the booth. At the same time, several other divine senses also appeared in the auction hall, seemingly interested in the 3 invisible treasure restrictions. When Lu Ping's divine sense rushed out of the pavilion, Daoist Xian Su and Daoist Xian Sen were somewhat surprised. They discovered that Lu Ping's divine sense was not inferior to the 2 core forging stage cultivators. Tianqin Laozu blinked her eyes, then revealed a faint smile. At this time, someone in the auction hall suddenly asked, "Fatty Dong, the 3 invisible sword spirit restrictions are certainly attractive, but without the invisible sword, what is the use of the first 3 ordinary restrictions?" Although Dong Laozu couldn't see the cultivation of the person who spoke, since the other party dared to call him by his nickname, it was obvious that the other party was a cultivator of the same status as him. Dong Laozu smiled and said, "First, these 3 invisible sword spirit restrictions are 3 sword spirit restrictions, then the invisible sword spirit restriction. Second, even if these 3 invisible sword spirit restrictions are used on ordinary flying swords, although the invisibility effect is greatly reduced, it is still quite effective. Third, Fei Ling's sect was able to create the invisible sword spirit restrictions out of thin air. Now that we have the 3 invisible sword spirit restrictions, don't you have the confidence to reverse engineer the 3 ordinary invisible sword spirit restrictions?" Although old ancestor Dong's words were reasonable, he still knew that the formless sword restriction didn't exist. Moreover, the power of the formless sword could only be fully unleashed with the formless sword technique. In fact, the formless sword technique created by the Fei Ling sect was actually an extremely strict and huge system. Not only did it contain the formless sword restriction, it also contained the entire set of formless sword technique, as well as the refinement of the formless sword technique. Therefore, the value of the 3 invisible sword spirit restrictions had to be discounted. However, Dong Laozu's words still aroused the enthusiasm of many cultivators in the auction hall. The starting price is 150 high-grade spirit stones. In a short period of time, the price of the 3 invisible sword spirit restrictions broke the threshold of 300 high-grade spirit stones. However, Lu Ping sat in the pavilion without any movement. At this time, everyone in Jinling noticed that Lu Ping was interested in the 3 invisible sword spirit restrictions. Li Xuanru also knew that Lu Ping had already cultivated the invisible sword art and had an invisible sword called Nether Water. Li Xuanru worriedly asked, "Ninth junior brother, do you still have enough high-grade spirit stones? We already have 320 high-grade spirit stones on the Reef Island. Senior sister still has 300 high-grade spirit stones. If junior brother," Lu Ping waved his hand and said gratefully, "Senior sister, don't worry, if junior brother has a need, I will not be polite. Li Xuanru knew that Lu Ping had a card up his sleeve, so she was relieved. Xian Tianjinren and the others saw that Lu Ping was still indifferent to the price of 350 high-grade spirit stones in the auction hall. They were very surprised at Lu Ping's wealth, but thinking of Lu Ping's identity as an alchemy grandmaster, they put on a natural expression. However, what they did not know was that Lu Ping could not accumulate high-grade spirit stones at all. If Lu Ping had not raided the 2 treasure vaults of the overturned Sea clan and accumulated a large number of high-grade spirit stones in a short period of time, Lu Ping was afraid that he would not have the confidence he had now. Actually, Lu Ping was waiting. At this time, one of the 40 pavilions floating on the white clouds had already made a bid, and Lu Ping was waiting for the cultivator in the next pavilion to make a bid. He did not want to attract attention and expose his identity, 380 high-grade spirit stones. The cultivator in the 17th pavilion in the sky was also interested in the 3 invisible sword psychic prohibitions, and he joined the ranks of the bidding. Old man bids 400 high-grade spirit stones. In the auction hall, a middle-aged cultivator dressed in purple was very arrogant, saying "old man" as if to indicate his identity as a Dharma adept. However, the psychic prohibitions would not be of much use to the Dharma adept Laozu. He was most likely doing this for the sake of his own descendants, 450 high-grade spirit stones. Lu Ping's first bid was too high. 50 high-grade spirit stones, and this price shocked the 3rd-generation disciples in the Jinling Pavilion. Although they all knew that Lu Ping was rich, to casually take out the equivalent of 4.5 million high-grade spirit stones, even someone like Shen Tianjinling, who had collected all the valuable items on him, would lose more than half of his net worth. Tianqin Laozu was obviously also stunned. She did not doubt that Lu Ping had such a large amount of wealth, but she did not believe that Lu Ping had so many high-grade spirit stones. At this time, Dong Laozu, who was in the middle of the auction hall, said, "All right, the guest in the 24th pavilion has bid 450 high-grade spirit stones. These 3 spiritual prohibitions are inherited from the Fei Ling sect. Is there anyone else who wants to bid?" In fact, these 3 spiritual prohibitions were not worth 400 high-grade spirit stones in the eyes of ordinary practitioners. Even though Dong Laozu had made a lot of extravagant talk, without the shapeless sword technique, with just these 3 spiritual prohibitions in hand, it would take generations and thousands of years of effort and a lot of resources. How could this set of swordsmanship be completely perfected? However, Lu Ping was different. He had the complete, shapeless sword art in hand, and he had fused the shapeless water into his protective aura. As long as he could upgrade the shapeless sword art to the level of a spirit-connected mystic treasure, Lu Ping would be able to upgrade the shapeless sword art's power to the level of a great technique. This way, with his mid-core forging realm cultivation base, Lu Ping would be able to master 3 great techniques. Even if he didn't use the life origin array, he would still be able to fight against a late-core forging realm cultivator. When Lu Ping bid 450 high-grade spirit stones, most of the previous bidders chose to give up, but then from the 17th pavilion came another bid, 480 high-grade spirit stones, 500 high-grade spirit stones. Lu Ping didn't budge an inch. The price of 500 high-grade spirit stones caused many people in the auction hall to start whispering. This price was a bit too high. Perhaps the sects in the 17th and 24th pavilions had the shapeless sword technique of the Fei Ling sect. It was said that among the 25 medium-sized sects in the Endless Sea, there were 4 sects from the North Sea. It was unknown whether the sects in the 17th and 20th pavilions were from the North Sea, and if so, which 2 sects were from the North Sea. However, there were also well-informed people who thought that the sects in the 2 pavilions might not be from the North Sea. When the secret cave residence of Fei Ling sect's Zhongxian Laozu in the East China Sea was discovered, the 5 major sects of the East China Sea and the underground boudoir all rushed into the cave residence to plunder. Therefore, the sects in the 2 pavilions might be from the East China Sea. Lu Ping's persistence finally made the 17th pavilion stop. Lu Ping put a storage bag on the stone table by the window of the pavilion. After a flash of light, the storage bag on the stone table disappeared. At the same time, the jade table in front of Dong Laozu also flashed with light, and the storage bag appeared on the jade table. Dong Laozu weighed the storage bag in his hand, smiled slightly, and then put the 3 jade slips on the small transmission array on the jade table. After the flash, Lu Ping took the 3 jade slips in his hand and carefully checked them with his divine sense. With a happy face, he put the jade slips in the storage ring. Next to him, Daoist Shen and the others said, "Congratulations, junior brother." Lu Ping obtained the treasure, and seeing that he was about to master another great magical power, he was happy in his heart, so he returned the greetings one by one. After a few more treasures, Dong Laozu took out a kind of heaven and earth spiritual object called ice jade. This was an earth middle grade ice attribute heaven and earth spiritual object, but when Daoist Xuanyu heard about this heaven and earth spiritual object, his spirit was shaken. He hesitated for a moment, then bowed to Tianqin Laozu and said, "Martial uncle, this disciple wants this heaven and earth spiritual object, but I only have 200 high-grade spirit stones. I hope martial uncle can help me." Daoist Xuanyu was different from others. He did not have a teacher to look after him, and he was able to reach this point almost by himself, so it was normal for him to be short of money. Tianqin Laozu, however, said seriously, "Martial nephew Xuanyu, have you thought it through? With your strength, you can definitely accumulate more than 100 years to refine a high-grade earth spiritual object. In this way, when you reach the 9th stage of the core forging stage, you will be able to refine at least 2 low-grade heaven spiritual objects and form a high-grade golden elixir. In this way, becoming a Dharma adept in the future will not be a problem." Daoist Xuanyu hesitated for a moment, then smiled bitterly and said, "To be honest, martial uncle, I have a piece of ice jade on me by chance. Although 2 mid-grade earth spiritual objects are not as good as a high-grade earth spiritual object, I can refine it now. This way, I can save more than 100 years of time." Tianqin Laozu nodded his head and said, "That is not necessarily a bad idea. The closer you get to the late core forging stage, the more accumulation you have compared to others. This way, it will be beneficial for you to form a golden elixir in the future. It is just that the benevolent see benevolence, and the wise see wisdom. The key is still whether a practitioner's cultivation can compete with his lifespan." Daoist Xuanyu saw Tianqin Laozu nod his head in agreement, and hurriedly said gratefully, "Thank you, martial uncle." Tianqin Laozu smiled lightly and said, "You don't have to thank me. This is the sect's reward for the few of you. To be able to meet a suitable heaven and earth spiritual object at this auction is also your luck." At this time, Dong Laozu also introduced the ice jade and said, "Although this ice jade is a mid-grade earth spiritual object, it is also rare among ice spiritual objects. Hence, the starting price is slightly higher. Let's start with 200 high-grade spirit stones." As soon as Dong Laozu finished speaking, 4 or 5 practitioners consecutively opened their mouths to bid. The price of the ice jade almost instantly shot up from 200 high-grade spirit stones to 300 high-grade spirit stones. Although Daoist Xuanyu's expression was still calm, his eyes were fixed on Dong Laozu, who was on the display stage. He did not dare to relax for even a moment. At the same time, he was becoming more and more nervous about the rising price of the ice jade. Chapter 512. The ice jade was a mid-grade earth step ice attribute heaven and earth spirit treasure, and it was considered quite a good treasure. After refining it and advancing to the late core forging stage, it was possible to condense a grade 7 golden core. Of course, if one could refine 2 ice jades like Daoist Xuanyu, then the chances of condensing a grade 7 golden core would be greatly increased. Because of this, the ice jade was quite popular among the cultivators in the auction house, and the bidding price had already exceeded 400 high-grade spirit stones. 500 high-grade spirit stones. Lyra Laozu finally bid, and directly raised the price of the ice jade to 500 high-grade spirit stones. It must be known that 500 high-grade spirit stones was an important threshold in this kind of large-scale auction. This was because in the past years, if there was no special requirement for a high-grade Earth Step Spirit treasure, then the starting price would be 500 high-grade spirit stones or above. Of course, it was also very rare for a high-grade Earth Step Spirit treasure to be auctioned with high-grade spirit stones. Unlike Lu Ping, who used 500 high-grade spirit stones to buy the 3 psychic treasure restrictions, Lyra Laozu's 500 high-grade spirit stones had scared off many bidders, but the ice jade was still a heaven and earth spirit treasure, and it was directly related to a cultivator's cultivation, so there were still people who did not give up. 520. Look! 600 high-grade spirit stones. The celestial zither ancestor bid once again. His emotionless voice was filled with an icy chill, as if there was a pressure hidden in his voice that was ready to be released. Lu Ping's expression changed. Lyra Laozu's way of speaking seemed to be a kind of magical ability, but this kind of magical ability was extremely obscure. Dong Laozu, who was in the middle of the auction house, raised his head and looked thoughtfully at the pavilion number 24. His lips moved, but in the end, he did not say anything. This was the privilege of the 40 pavilions. The auction house was not high or low, but Lyra Laozu's bid had revealed too much information. Was it worth it to offend a famous overseas sect for a mid-grade Earth Step Spirit treasure? Dong Laozu secretly smiled bitterly. This was the weakness of a rogue cultivator. Sure enough, as soon as Lyra Laozu's voice fell, all the cultivators in the auction house who were interested in the ice jade shut their mouths. Even the several pavilions no longer raised the price. It was not that they were afraid of Lyra Laozu, but they could hear from Lyra Laozu's words that he was determined to get the ice jade. A mid-grade Earth Step Spirit treasure was not enough to attract the attention of these pavilion sections. Moreover, the price of 600 high-grade spirit stones was already the limit of this ice jade. Any more and it would not be worth it. This way, it could be considered as giving face to the sect of pavilion number 24. Next time, if other sects took a fancy to a treasure, Jinling's pavilion number 24 would not make it difficult for them to snatch it. Daoist Xianyu quickly took out 250 high-grade spirit stones from his body and placed them on the stone table together with the storage pouch that Lyra Laozu had taken out. Light flashed twice, and the 600 high-grade spirit stones disappeared. Instead, a jade box containing the ice jade appeared on the stone table. Daoist Xianyu held the jade box in his hands with a happy expression on his face. Everyone congratulated him. Daoist Xianyu was not good with words, so he only returned the greeting one by one. No one knew what he was saying. Everyone understood his character, so they did not care about it. Next, several treasures were auctioned. Among them, there was also a mid-grade Earth Step Spirit treasure. It just so happened that the attribute of Daoist Xianju's cultivation method was the same. However, there was only one spirit treasure. Daoist Xianju was not like Daoist Xianyu, who already had a similar spirit treasure. Daoist Xianju was an outstanding cultivator of the same generation. Naturally, he disdained to smelt a mid-grade Earth Step Spirit treasure. In the end, he raised the price to 400 spirit stones before giving up. However, there was still a trace of regret in his heart. Just as everyone was saying a few words of comfort to Daoist Xianju, Dong Laozu took out another item. Lyra Laozu's expression suddenly froze, and she immediately sat up straight. Everyone was shocked. What kind of treasure could make even Laozu lose his composure? Everyone, including Lu Ping, looked at Dong Laozu in surprise. They saw Dong Laozu holding a flying sword with both hands. The sword ridge was slightly narrower than an ordinary flying sword, but the sword body was half a foot longer than an ordinary flying sword. He introduced it. This flying sword is called Thin Water. It is a spirit-nurturing level magic treasure that has condensed 7 treasure restrictions. Thin Water Sword, it's actually this item. When Daoist Xian Sun and Daoist Xian Su heard Dong Laozu introduce the name of the sword, they said at the same time. They seemed to recognize the sword as well. Dong Laozu continued his introduction in the middle of the auction house. There is no need to elaborate on the quality of this flying sword. I believe that everyone here is a person with keen eyes. Unfortunately, this sword seems to be a male and female dual sword. If one were to use this sword alone, it would be difficult to display its full power. Even so, a spirit-nurturing level magic treasure is still considered rare. As requested by the auctioneer, the base price of this flying sword will be set at 500 high-grade spirit stones. Everyone, please bid. A spirit-nurturing level magic treasure was priced at 500 high-grade spirit stones. Although this was the lowest quality of a spirit-nurturing magic treasure, the quality of this flying sword did not seem to be able to barely qualify as a spirit-nurturing magic treasure. Therefore, setting such a low price was clearly unreasonable. As a result, everyone in the auction hall began to ponder. It seemed that there was something wrong with this flying sword. They thought about what Dong Laozu had said about this flying sword being a male and female sword. Could it be that after losing one sword, the power of the flying sword was not difficult to display, but difficult to display? For a moment, after Dong Laozu announced the start of the auction, there was an awkward silence in the auction house. After a while, the first spirit-nurturing magic treasure was sold for a price of 620 high-grade spirit stones. A spirit-nurturing grade mystic treasure could only be unleashed by a late core forging realm cultivator or above. Even though Lu Ping had more than 10 spirit-nurturing mystic treasures in his possession, none of them were spirit-nurturing mystic treasures. The water-controlling flag was a spirit-nurturing mystic treasure in the past, but unfortunately, it was heavily damaged and dropped from a spirit-nurturing grade to a spirit-nurturing mystic treasure. Lu Ping once heard from his teacher, ancestor Lu Tianling, that spirit-nurturing grade mystic treasures were rare even in the hands of late core forging cultivators. On the other hand, cultivators who had just entered the Avatar realm often used spirit-nurturing mystic treasures. Firstly, it was because to upgrade a mystic treasure to the spirit-nurturing grade required a large amount of precious spirit materials. Secondly, spirit-nurturing grade mystic treasures were even rarer. Lastly, spirit-nurturing grade mystic treasures were extremely powerful. Although late core forging cultivators could unleash their full power, they couldn't fully control them. Only cultivators who had reached the peak of the core forging realm or even the Avatar realm could wield a spirit-nurturing mystic treasure as they pleased. When enlightened Master Xian Hui saw Laozu's expression, he could not help but ask, "Teacher, do you know the origin of this sword? This flying sword doesn't seem to be very popular." "Not popular?" Tianqin Laozu chuckled, "That's because they don't know the origin of this sword and are hesitant. Don't worry, there will be people who can't wait to make a move." This time, the Songhai sect and Songlang sect came together. At first, the sects of the North Sea didn't know why, but it turns out that they got the news that the thin water sword is going to appear in the auction. This time, no matter what, our sect has to interfere. I'm afraid that the mysterious spirit, sea flame, and Shuiyan sects will not let go of this opportunity. It won't be that easy for the Songhai and Songlang sects to obtain the thin water sword. No matter how Lu Ping looked at it, Tianqin Laozu's laughter was a bit strange, as if there was a hint of mischief hidden in his laughter. Enlightened Master Xian Su and Enlightened Master Xian Sun looked at each other, as if they were observing a moment of silence for the Songhai and Songlang sections. At this time, a cloaked cultivator in the auction hall finally called out a new high price with an incomparably calm tone. Old man bids 650 high-grade spirit stones. Enlightened Master Xian Su, who was at the side, asked Enlightened Master Xian Su in confusion, "Martial uncle, what is the origin of this thin water sword? Why would it bring the Songlang sect and Songhai sect, who have been enemies for thousands of years, together?" Enlightened Master Xian Su laughed. "Although I know a little about the thin water sword, it seems that when the Songhai sect separated from the Songlang sect, it was because of a pair of thin water sword. I heard that this pair of flying swords was passed down by the founder of the Songlang sect. Although the male and female swords only have one spirit-raising treasure restriction each, but when the two swords are combined, their power is even greater than condensing 3 spirit-raising treasure restriction, a top magic treasure. However, regarding this thin water sword, I'm afraid that junior sister Tianqin knows more about it." At this time, in the auction hall, after the black-cloaked cultivator called out 650 high-grade spirit stones, Pavilion 15 suddenly called out 700 high-grade spirit stones. Tianqin Laozu's mouth revealed a trace of mockery. Immediately after the black-cloaked cultivator raised the price by 720 high-grade spirit stones, Pavilion 33 raised the price to 750 high-grade spirit stones. At this time, the entire auction hall seemed to have sensed something and looked to see if the black-cloaked cultivator would make another bid. However, this time, the black-cloaked cultivator gave up. Just as Tianqin Laozu was a bit confused, a green-clothed cultivator not far from the black-cloaked cultivator suddenly raised the price to 800 high-grade spirit stones. This small change had maintained the peace of the hall for a short period of time. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something. At this time, Elder Tianqin said with some uncertainty, could it be that the two sects have split up and quoted their prices separately? This is a bit uncertain. No matter what, this thin water sword is something that the Songhai sect and the Songlang sect must obtain. With that, Tianqin Laozu raised the price of the thin water sword to 820 high-grade spirit stones. This is already the highest bid treasure since the start of the sect's auction, 850 high-grade spirit stones. The green-cloaked cultivator was still abnormally calm as he bid. However, this bid seemed to ignite the mood of the entire auction hall. There was definitely a problem with this flying sword. Chapter 513. Even though it was a spirit-nurturing treasure, it was only one of a pair of flying swords, yet it was sold for a high price of 850 spirit stones. It was a little too much, not to mention the atmosphere of the auction was a little strange. 900 spirit stones. After the 15th, 33rd, and 24th pavilions, the 7th pavilion also joined the bidding, and each of the 4 pavilions increased the price by more than 50 high-grade spirit stones, as if they all had their eyes on this flying sword. Lu Ping and the others knew that the 4 pavilions had probably calculated that the black-cloaked cultivator and the cultivator shrouded in green mist would spare no effort for this flying sword. At the same time, the 2 cultivators downstairs also seemed to understand that the 4 pavilions were probably the 4 sects of the North Sea. 1,000 spirit stones. After the 7th pavilion called out the high price of 900 spirit stones, the 2 cultivators in the auction hall seemed to fall into silence at the same time. A moment later, the black-cloaked cultivator suddenly called out an even more shocking price. Tianqin Laozu frowned and said, these 2 should be the cultivators of the Songlang sect and the Songhai sect. It seems like the 2 of them have reached a consensus and want to work together to obtain this thin water sword. Daoist Master Xian Sen's face was also somewhat serious as he said, could it be that the 2 sects will choose to merge again? If they really merge, with the current strength of the 2 sects, they will be above either the Shui Yan Pavilion or the Hai Yan sect. They will not be far from the Xianling sect. They won't go so far as to merge, but this thin water sword was passed down by the common ancestor of the 2 sections. Perhaps it contains some secrets of the 2 sects that outsiders do not know about. Moreover, just the fact that it is a relic left behind by the founder of the 2 sects is worth the 2 sects spending a huge amount of spirit stones to buy it. Tianqin Laozu stared at the 2 people downstairs and said, I just don't know which Laozu these 2 people are from the Songhai sect and the Songlang sect. Enlightened Master Xian Hui also asked, Master, since this thin water-flowing sword was used by the founder of the Songlang sect, how could it be lost outside? Now that the thin water-flowing sword has appeared, where is the flowing sword? Is it still with the 2 sects? Tianqin Laozu smiled and said, the Songlang sect was caught in its own trap. Back then, the Songlang sect took in a core forging cultivator from the Central Plains. This cultivator was also an alchemy grandmaster, so the Songlang sect was very courteous to this cultivator. However, this cultivator couldn't be restrained. Although the Songlang sect spent a lot of effort, this cultivator never joined the Songlang sect. Later, this cultivator left many of the alchemy legacies he had obtained from the Central Plains in the Azure Wave sect. He felt that he had repaid the Azure Wave sect's kindness, so he became an itinerant cultivator and wandered the North Sea's cultivation world. After that, this cultivator used his exquisite alchemy skills to become an alchemy grandmaster and successfully entered the Dharma phase. In the North Sea's cultivation world, he became a famous itinerant cultivator. However, although this Laozu thought of himself as an itinerant cultivator, because of his relationship with the Zhanglang sect when he first came to the North Sea, he had always maintained close contact with the Zhanglang sect. The Zhanglang sect had always treated him as a guest, so he could enter and leave the sect freely. However, one day, someone suddenly broke into the Azure Wave sect's ancestral hall. The intruder's strength was very high, and he was very familiar with the situation of the Azure Wave sect's encampment. He avoided the various restrictive formations of the sect, and injured the Azure Wave sect cultivators guarding the ancestral hall. Then, he wanted to steal the thin water flowing forever twin swords that were enshrined in the ancestral hall. Fortunately, one of the Zhanglang sect's Laozu arrived in time and activated the formation in an attempt to stop this person. The intruder only took the long water-flowing sword and, relying on his familiarity with the formation, directly broke through the formation and left. When the Zhanglang sect members heard the news and rushed over, they turned their suspicious gazes to the guest, Laozu. This was because only he was so familiar with the Zhanglang sect, and only he, who was at the Dharma stage, would be able to come and go as he pleased when the Zhanglang sect was caught off guard. Therefore, the two mid-Dharma adepts of the Zhanglang sect, Laozu, personally led the other two early Dharma adepts of the Zhanglang sect towards the guest's abode. After the two parties met, faced with the questioning of the four Laozu of the Zhanglang sect, the guest was very surprised and naturally denied the crime of stealing the long water-flowing sword. The four Laozu of the Zhanglang sect did not believe him and wanted to capture the guest and bring him back to the sect. The two parties did not agree and started fighting. The guest was only an early Dharma adept and was naturally no match for them. Very quickly, he was severely injured. However, the guest was very stubborn and would rather die than admit to stealing the Zhanglang sect's ancestral hall. Just as the Zhanglang sect adepts were about to kill him out of anger, the Zhanglang sect sent out another warning. Someone was attacking the Zhanglang mountain where the Zhanglang sect was based. Furthermore, the intruder was very strong and seemed to be very familiar with the Zhanglang sect's grounds. All sorts of formations and prohibitions were easily broken by the intruder and he rushed directly towards the Zhanglang sect's ancestral hall. The four Laozu of the Zhanglang sect turned pale with fright. They no longer cared about the guests in front of them and all flew back towards the Zhanglang mountain. However, they were still too late. After the four Laozu returned, the two early Dharma Laozu guarding the Zhanglang mountain had already been injured by the intruder. The thin water sword that was left in the ancestral hall was also stolen by the intruder. However, this time, the intruder was recognized by the two Laozu of the Zhanglang sect. It was the remnant of the failing sect, the Zhongshuan Laozu who had been hiding in the East Sea training world. The truth was immediately revealed. The Laozu of the Zhanglang sect suddenly realized that in order to strengthen the sect's protective formation, the Zhanglang sect had once invited the most outstanding talent of the failing sect, who was only at the late core forging stage, but was already a master of craftsmanship and arrays, to perfect the sect's protective formation. Zhongshuan Laozu was Zhao Yuqiang's teacher, so when Zhao Yuqiang was perfecting the Zhanglang sect's protective formation, he must have seen through the Zhanglang sect's protective formation at the same time and reported it to the failing sect. As Zhao Yuqiang's teacher, Zhongshuan Laozu naturally had the right to know such confidential information. Thus, Zhongshuan Laozu was naturally able to come and go as he pleased in the Zhanglang sect's encampment and steal the thin water sword. Not only did the Zhanglang sect lose the ancestor's relic, but they also severely injured a Dharma adept and alchemy grandmaster who could have been a strong ally of the sect, cutting off their path to the mid-Dharma stage. It could be said that they had completely turned against each other, and for a while, the Zhanglang sect became the laughingstock of the North Sea training world. However, this was only the fuse that led to the Zhanglang sect split. The Zhanglang sect originally had 2 mid-Dharma adepts and 4 early Dharma adepts. This level of strength was slightly stronger than the Haiyan sect and Shuiyan Pavilion, and was one of the 25 mid-tier sects in the overseas training world. However, the Zhonglang sect's two mid-Dharma adepts of the Zhonglang sect had been at odds with each other for a long time, as if there had been enmity between them for a long time. The four early Dharma adepts Laozu also took their own sides, and after this incident, the two sects blamed each other. In the end, one of the sects took a portion of the Zhonglang sect's practitioners and left the Zhonglang sect, and because of the Zhonglang sect split, only 4 of the 5 strongest mid-tier sects were left in the North Sea. Everyone was born in the North Sea, and although they knew that the Zhonglang sect and the Zhonglang sect were originally one family, they did not know that there was such a detailed story behind the split between the two sections. Now that they were listening to Tianqin Laozu explain the whole story, everyone listened with great interest. In the auction hall, after the cloaked elder had bid a high price of 1,000 spirit stones for the thin water sword, there was a moment of silence before the 7th room called out a bid of 1,050 spirit stones. The cultivator, whose face was covered in green fog, snorted coldly, causing the entire auction hall to buzz. It was obvious that this person had to be a Dharma adept to dare to do such a thing in the auction hall. However, he did not make a bid, and the black-cloaked cultivator followed suit and called out a bid of 1,100 high-grade spirit stones. This also made everyone more certain that these two people were the cultivators of the Zhonglang sect and the Zhonghai sect, and they were Dharma adepts. Spiritual Master Xian Su also added, in the past, the North Sea cultivators joined forces to ambush Zhong Xian Laozu in the East Sea, but they did not find the thin water sword on him. Later, the North Sea cultivators searched the East Sea for a few more years, trying to find the secret cave that Zhong Xian Laozu hid in the East Sea. In the end, they returned empty-handed. After the Zhonghai sect and the Zhonglang sect retreated, they searched the East Sea for a few more years, but still found nothing. Until a few years ago, Zhong Xian's cave was discovered in Skyren's sphere of influence. The East Sea cultivators heard the news and looted the cave. Maybe it was at that time that the thin water sword fell into the hands of a lucky cultivator who didn't know the details of the thin water sword, so it was auctioned off at that auction. Now, we just don't know who has the long water sword. At this time, Spiritual Master Xian Bei asked, Uncle Master, who was the guest cultivator of the Zhonglang sect. Since he is Dharma adept Laozu and a master alchemist, he must be a famous cultivator in the North Sea. Tianqin Laozu once again called out a price of 1,200 spirit stones. Then he smiled and said, that cultivator came from the middle of the way to visit the Fei Ling sect. Unexpectedly, the Fei Ling sect had already been destroyed. After a series of coincidences, he became friends with the cultivators of the Zhonglang sect. This person is generally known as Qingjian Laozu in the North Sea cultivation world. Lu Ping's heart was beating rapidly. He raised his head and couldn't help but blurt out, Qingjian Laozu. Seeing Lu Ping's expression, Tianqin Laozu asked, what? Could it be that Martial Nephew Lu has also heard of this person? At this time, Spiritual Master Xian Sen smiled and said, Senior Martial Sister might not know this, but this Qingjian Laozu's cave mansion has already been discovered by Martial Nephew Lu and a few junior cultivators from other sections. Martial Nephew Lu even obtained Qingjian Laozu's inheritance and handed it over to the sect. Oh! Tianqin Laozu looked at Lu Ping strangely and said, Martial Nephew Lu is really lucky. Lu Ping smiled and said, it is indeed luck. Suddenly, the black-cloaked cultivator, who had been bidding all this time, bellowed furiously and a formidable atmosphere of coercion erupted outwards. Next, an unstoppable divine sense charged towards Pavilion number 7, Pavilion number 17, Pavilion number 24 and Pavilion number 33 in the sky with an unstoppable momentum. As a result, the restrictive arrays covering the surface of the 4 pavilions burst apart. Chapter 514. Oh no, it's the Zhonglang sect's East Pole Laozu. Tianqin Laozu's expression changed, and his hands conjured 12 spells in an instant. However, before he could cast the spells, the divine consciousness of the black-cloaked man had already broken through the seals of the 24th pavilion. Immediately after, the seals that Tianqin Laozu had set up earlier also began to crumble. "Stop! Who are you, sir? How dare you behave so atrociously in this auction?" The order in the auction hall had been thrown into chaos by the sudden outburst of the black-cloaked man. The Dharma Power Laozu, who had been hiding in the dark to maintain order, had never expected that the one to act up on the spot would be a mid-Dharma adept, whose level of practice was no lower than theirs. For a moment, it was too late for them to stop him. However, just as the black-clad cultivator's divine sense was about to break into the tower, the black-clad cultivator suddenly grunted and his body shook violently. It seemed as though he was enduring a great deal of pain. At the same time, he had only just destroyed the restrictive arrays of the other 3 towers. Just as the identities of the cultivators inside the 4 towers were about to be exposed, the black-clad cultivator's divine sense abruptly retreated like a receding tide. The green-cloaked cultivator stood up abruptly. At this moment, 7 or 8 auras that were no weaker than those of the black-cloaked cultivator suddenly shot out from the auction hall. They locked onto the black-cloaked cultivator and the green-cloaked cultivator who had suddenly stood up. If the 2 of them made any further moves, the hidden sects of the Phantom City would be suppressed by the Laozu. For a moment, everyone in the auction hall felt insecure, especially the cultivators near the black-cloaked cultivator. Most of them had been shaken by the sudden outburst of his divine consciousness and were bleeding from their mouths and noses. They had been caught in the crossfire and had wanted to avoid it, but they had been suppressed by the divine consciousness of a few mid-Dharma adepts. However, there were also a few who were not seriously affected. It was clear that the Dharma Power Laozu had also concealed his level of practice to participate in this auction. The black-clothed Laozu reached out to stop the cultivator in the green mist. "Don't move, they are prepared, it's too late now." The cultivator, whose face was covered by the green mist, raised his head and seemed to be looking at pavilions number 7, number 17, number 24, and number 33 floating in the sky. Even though his face was covered by the green mist, Lu Ping and the others seemed to be able to sense the anger in his sharp eyes. The masked cultivator in black said coldly, I really didn't expect that the cultivator in room 24 would have the thought-dissolving powder. I wonder when the secret of the Central Plains Lu family fell into your sect's hands? Because of the words of the masked cultivator in black, room 24 became the focus of everyone's attention. However, the reputation of the thought-dissolving powder made many curious cultivators give up on the idea of spying. As for those who had not heard of the thought-dissolving powder, seeing that even the mid-Dharma adept Laozu had been defeated, they naturally would not ask for trouble. In the room, Lu Ping's expression was as cold as still water. He did not feel the slightest bit of joy at being able to trick the mid-Dharma adept Laozu. The words of the masked cultivator in black were obviously using someone else to do his dirty work. Fortunately, the various sects were randomly teleported into the attics. Just now, with the deterrence of the thought-dissolving powder, the cultivators who had the intention of spying on them gave up. Thus, there was no need to worry about others discovering Jinling's identity. Tianqin Laozu formed a seal with 12 different hand seals and set up an even more intricate seal outside the attic to prevent others from spying on them. However, the deterrence of the thought-dissolving powder was enough. In a corner of the auction venue, 2 cultivators stared at room 24 with bright eyes. After a long time, Liao Ruanjia, who was beside them, secretly asked the cultivator next to him, Brother Runjian, when did the secret of the thought-dissolving powder of our family be leaked? The cultivator next to him had a serious expression, but he said hesitantly, the family has sent out a few bottles of the thought-dissolving powder before, so it's hard to guarantee that it won't end up overseas. If the secret of the thought-dissolving powder was really leaked, then it should be that bastard Peng Xiuan from the Crystal Palace. I didn't expect him to have even stolen the thought-dissolving powder. I wonder how many more secrets of the family have been stolen by him. Could it be that the cultivator in room 24 is a cultivator from the Crystal Palace? Liao Ruanjia wasn't sure either. He thought for a moment and said, it could also be Xianling's sect. After all, Peng Xiuan was ordered to go to the North Sea. Now that Xianling's sect and the Crystal Palace are on good terms, maybe he won't give the thought-dissolving powder to Xianling's sect, but it's hard to say that he won't give a bottle of the thought-dissolving powder to Xianling's sect as a favor. The cultivator next to him looked at the 4 rooms in the sky and said, "The key to the problem is probably the thin water sword. Those 4 rooms are obviously taking turns to raise the price. Every time, it's after the black-robed cultivator and the cultivator in the green mist bid. It's obvious that these 4 rooms don't care about the thin water sword, but rather that these 2 people are determined to get the thin water sword. That's why they've tacitly agreed to take turns to bid. It's obvious that they don't want the 2 people to get the thin water sword so easily. As long as we know the origin of the thin water sword, then we'll know who these 2 people are and the identity of the 4 rooms in the sky." A faint voice came from an unknown direction in the auction hall. It was directed at the black-robed cultivator and the cultivator in the green mist. "If the 2 of you still want the thin water sword, it's best that you abide by the rules of this auction hall. No matter what, the 2 of you are people of high status. This time, Phantom City will give you face, but if there's a next time, the 2 of you don't have to leave Phantom City anymore." Laozu of the late Dharma stage. This auction hall actually had a late Dharma adept, Laozu. "Humph." The black-robed cultivator snorted coldly. This time, he didn't use the power of his divine will. Then, he sat down on his seat and coldly bid again, 1,400 high-grade spirit stones. Seeing this, the cultivator in the green mist also sat back down. He just tilted his head slightly, as if looking coldly at the 4 rooms in the sky. The hundreds of cultivators in the auction hall who had regained their order also looked at the 4 rooms that had taken turns to bid. In room 24, Tianqin Laozu's expression changed, but he didn't say a word. The other 3 rooms didn't bid either. On the stage, Dong Laozu chuckled and said, "Since no one else is bidding, this thin water sword belongs to this friend." A servant in the early core forging stage held a wooden tray in his hand. The black-robed cultivator threw a storage bag from the wooden tray. The servant scanned the storage bag with his divine will, but he looked hesitant. The black-robed cultivator snorted coldly again and pointed at the cultivator in the green mist who was sitting not far from him. The servant looked at Dong Laozu on the stage. Dong Laozu nodded slightly, and the servant walked towards the cultivator in the green mist. The cultivator in the green mist looked back at the black-robed cultivator, as if there was nothing he could do. He also threw a storage bag into the wooden tray. The servant bowed slightly to the 2 and handed the wooden tray to Dong Laozu. Dong Laozu placed the thin water sword on the wooden tray. After the servant brought the thin water sword over, he hesitated again. This time, the cultivator in the green mist took the initiative to point at the black-robed cultivator, and the servant handed the thin water sword to the black-robed cultivator. Seeing that the thin water sword was in the hands of the black-robed cultivator, Tianqin Laozu calmed down and said, "It seems that the 2 sects have really joined forces. The Zhanglang sect sent Dongji Laozu, so the other cultivator in the green mist should be Dongyi Laozu from the Zhanglang sect." Lu Ping knew these 2 people, or rather, all the slightly accomplished cultivators in the North Sea knew them. Dongji Laozu was the only mid-Dharma adept in the Zhanglang sect, and the other cultivator, Dongyi Laozu, was the only mid-Dharma adept in the Zhanglang sect, and he was only 1 step away from advancing to the mid-Dharma stage. The Zhanglang sect now had 1 mid-Dharma Laozu and 3 early Dharma Laozu. Although the Zhanglang sect only had 1 mid-Dharma adept and 2 early Dharma adepts, the Zhanglang sect was Jinling's ally. They had once received help from Jinling, allowing one of the early Dharma adepts to reach the peak of the early Dharma stage, and he was only 1 step away from advancing to the mid-Dharma stage. Once these 2 sects joined forces, with 2 mid-Dharma Laozu and 5 early Dharma adepts, there would be a total of 7 Laozu. Their strength would have long surpassed the Shuiyan Pavilion and the Haiyan sect, and they would be on par with the Xianling sect. The power structure of the North Sea training world would instantly change. Tianqin Laozu seemed to have suddenly thought of something. He glanced at Lu Ping and said to the crowd, "The matter of the thought-melting elixir will end here. The Lu family of Central Plains is not weaker than our sect, but the Lu family is an alchemy family, and their hidden power in the Central Plains training world is far from what our sect can compare to." In the middle of the auction hall, Dong Laozu had already taken out another item and started to introduce it. This was actually a type of spirit beast called wind apricot. There were a total of 3 of them, but they attracted a lot of Lu Ping's interest. After the spirit beasts were refined into elixirs, they had a great effect on the training of a practitioner's physical body. The bone-forging elixir that Lu Ping had obtained from the Liao family was one of them. However, before Lu Ping could make a bid, Tianqin Laozu, who was beside him, had already raised the price to 500 high-grade spirit stones. Lu Ping thought about it and did not make another bid. This was because he had already noticed that after the wind apricots started to bid, almost in an instant, almost half of the 40 pavilions had already made a bid. Furthermore, in the auction hall, including the black-cloaked Dongji Laozu and the fog-covered Dongi Laozu, there were also a few practitioners who seemed to be in the Dharma stage who had placed their bids. The price of the 3 wind apricot instantly rose from the starting price of 300 high-grade spirit stones to 400 high-grade spirit stones. It exceeded 500 and directly reached 600 high-grade spirit stones. Lu Ping patted his chest without anyone noticing and coughed slightly. There was a small house made of gold hanging below his neck, and there were 10 large spirit demon peaches on the spirit demon peach tree in the middle of the gold house, and each one of them was worth as much as the wind apricot. Tianqin Laozu gave up when the price of the wind apricot exceeded 700 high-grade spirit stones. In the end, the 3 wind apricot were won by the 4th pavilion at the price of 800 high-grade spirit stones. After the 3 wind apricots were auctioned off, old ancestor Dong finally took out a high-grade earth step origin treasure. The entire auction hall abruptly went silent, as the appetizer of the Spirit Fantasy City's grand auction meet had finally ended. Chapter 515. A high-grade earth step origin treasure was a threshold for any cultivator who was about to enter the late core forging stage. If a cultivator could refine a high-grade earth step origin treasure and advance to the late core forging stage, then there was a 50 to 60% chance that after reaching the 9th layer of core forging, as long as they had a heaven step origin treasure, they would be able to form a 7th grade golden core or higher. Of course, like Taoist Master Xuanyu, who had refined 2 mid-grade earth step origin treasures, it was also possible for him to refine a heaven step origin treasure after reaching the 9th layer of core forging. It was just that the price he would have to pay was far higher than refining a high-grade earth step origin treasure. However, how many cultivators could successfully refine a high-grade earth step origin treasure before advancing to the late core forging stage? Among the 7 most outstanding 6th layer core forging stage cultivators from Jinling's 3rd generation, only Taoist Master Shen could directly refine a high-grade earth step origin treasure after obtaining it. The others, including Lu Ping's 2nd senior sister, Li Xuanru, and Tianqin Laozu's eldest disciple, Taoist Master Shen Hui, would need decades or even hundreds of years of accumulation to refine a high-grade earth step origin treasure. Moreover, after the appearance of a high-grade earth step origin treasure, the auction house's trading method also changed. The high-grade earth step origin treasure that Dong Laozu took out was called the Flying Parasol Wood. It was a wood attribute origin treasure. As soon as this origin treasure was taken out, Taoist Master Xuantian's breathing became rapid. He was Tianlin Laozu's eldest disciple and cultivated Jinling's wood attribute cultivation method. This flying parasol wood was just right for him to refine. Taoist Master Shen Tian was calculating his net worth when he heard Laozu's voice from outside. According to the old rules, high-grade earth step origin treasures have to be put aside for spirit stones. Unless you have top-grade spirit stones to exchange for it, it will generally be bartered according to the auction house's request. The auctioneer has 3 ways to exchange this flying parasol wood. The first way is to exchange it for a high-grade earth-grade water attribute fei. This condition was actually the most preferred method of exchange by the auctioneer. However, on this occasion, the cultivators of the sects would not care about this method of exchange. Only those who were lucky enough to have a high-grade earth step water attribute spiritual object in their hands but didn't cultivate a water attribute cultivation method would be able to exchange it for a suitable spiritual object of the same grade. The second is to exchange for a high-grade pill furnace. This method of exchange was targeted at the various sects with strong foundations. However, when Lu Ping heard this, he shook his head. A high-grade pill furnace? Before Lu Ping gave Peng Shiyuan's pill furnace to Tianlu Laozu, the entire Jinling only had 6 high-grade pill furnaces. How could they use them to exchange for a high-grade earth step origin treasure? With Jinling's current strength, this was already the case. Other than the 8 big sects and the Crystal Palace, there was also the mysterious Demon Clan, the Heavenly Moon sect, and the Yuan family of the Central Plains. No one would be willing to use a high-grade pill furnace to exchange for a high-grade earth step origin treasure. After all, a high-grade alchemy furnace could produce countless pills for many people, but a high-grade earth-level spiritual item could only give a person the chance to break through to the golden core stage and become a Dharma adept. It was clear which was more important. The third method is to exchange for some top-grade spirit stones. The highest bidder gets it. After Dong Laozu finished speaking, Shen Tianjinren seemed to realize that his chances were not high, but he still looked hopefully at Lyra Laozu. Lyra Laozu thought for a moment, then said to Shen Tianjinren, "The first method is absolutely impossible, but using a high-grade pill furnace to exchange for a high-grade earth step origin treasure is definitely not allowed by the sect, so I can only use some top-grade spirit stones to try." Shen Tianjinren had already expected this result. Although he did not have much hope for another would attribute high-grade earth step origin treasure, he still bowed gratefully and said, "Thank you, Uncle Master." Lyra Laozu nodded and took out a storage bag. Then, a few plain-looking stones appeared in his hand. Lu Ping was very familiar with these stones and knew that they were top-grade spirit stones. Lyra Laozu put 12 top-grade spirit stones into the storage bag. After thinking for a moment, he took out 3 more and put them into the storage bag. Then, he placed the storage bag in the small teleportation array on the stone table. After a flash of light, the storage bag disappeared. At the same time, on the jade table in front of Dong Laozu, the small teleportation array flashed continuously, and 5 storage bags appeared on the jade table. 3 early core forging attendants shuttled through the hall with wooden trays in their hands, bringing 6 storage bags to Dong Laozu. Great Ancestor Dong checked the 11 storage pouches one by one, then took out the treasures stored in each of the storage pouches and displayed them. Sure enough, out of the 11 storage bags, 8 of them were actually filled with top-quality spirit stones, the most actually had 18 top-quality spirit stones, while the least also had 10 top-quality spirit stones. Taoist Master Shen sighed. Even though he had already mentally prepared himself, he still held on to a sliver of hope. Watching from the side, Ancestor Tianqin said, "You don't need to be disheartened. With how grand the auction this time is, it's unlikely that there will only be a single wood attribute earth spirit treasure." Shen Tianjinren nodded, but from his expression, it was obvious that he did not have much hope for the appearance of another wood attribute origin treasure. As for the other 3 storage bags, Dong Laozu took out a high-grade pill furnace from one of them, causing all the cultivators in the hall to sigh. After Dong Laozu opened the other 2 storage bags, there was actually a high-grade earth step water attribute origin treasure inside. Compared to the cultivation world of the central continent, the only advantage the overseas cultivation world had was that water attribute origin treasures were relatively more common. Old Ancestor Dong first returned the other 9 storage pouches one by one. Then, he pointed at the 2 storage pouches that contained water attribute spirit items and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist number 103 and fellow Taoist number 197, both of you have a water attribute spirit item. If you want to exchange for this wood attribute spirit item, it will depend on your abilities." Dong Laozu's voice just fell, only to hear a muffled voice say, "In that case, I will add 200 high-grade spirit stones." Dong Laozu chuckled and said, "Okay, fellow Taoist 103 will add 200 high-grade spirit stones. At this moment, another voice resounded, and it sneered, you can afford 200 high-grade spirit stones. Since the fellow Taoist who auctioned the soaring parasol would needs high-grade spirit stones, then I'll add 3 high-grade spirit stones. Cultivator 103 let out a muffled snort, did not refute this provocation, and continued to say, 3 top-grade spirit stones and 50 high-grade spirit stones. The previous sneer sounded again, in that case, this flying parasol wood is fellow Taoist 197's. Cultivator 103 did not bid any more, obviously feeling that he was at a loss. Dong Laozu smiled and said, in that case, this flying parasol wood is fellow Taoist 197's. After the appearance of the earth high-grade spirit item, the grand auction turned into a trade fair where everyone took what they needed. This made Lu Ping and the others feel a little out of place. But there was nothing they could do about it. In the cultivation world, there were many things that couldn't be measured in spirit stones. However, the appearance of the next item once again pulled all the cultivators back to the auction of spirit stones. This alchemy master's inheritance includes 23 types of pill recipes for the core forging stage. In addition, there are also 3 types of pill recipes for the half-step core forging stage. Of course, the most important thing is that this alchemy master also has a pill recipe that can strengthen the body. This alchemy grandmaster's inheritance will be auctioned with spirit stones. The starting price is 500 high-grade spirit stones, the highest bidder wins. This set of alchemy grandmaster's inheritance obviously came from a rogue cultivator, because an alchemy grandmaster was an extremely important existence in every sect. The entire sect's collection of alchemy grandmaster's inheritance must be open to them, so it was impossible for this alchemy grandmaster's inheritance to only contain a mere 23 kinds of core forging pill recipes. Just like Lu Ping, after he became an alchemy grandmaster, although he was not bound by the pill pavilion, Jinling Laozu still opened almost all of the Jinling's pill recipes to Lu Ping, allowing him to choose and refine them himself. Now, Lu Ping had mastered nearly 100 kinds of core forging pill recipes, far more than an alchemy grandmaster who was originally a rogue cultivator could compare. This kind of alchemy grandmaster's inheritance, in addition to being valued by the alchemy grandmaster, almost all sects would spare no effort to collect this kind of inheritance, used to increase the foundation of their sect. Moreover, most of the cultivators in the auction hall were late core forging cultivators, so they had a good understanding of the importance of strengthening the body in the transcendent stage. Therefore, the pill recipe that could strengthen the body added a lot of weight to this set of inheritance. The ancestor of the Sky Zither sect was clearly quite interested in the inheritance. After some thought, she sent 5 high-grade spirit stones into the hands of the ancestor of Dong through the teleportation formation. At the same time, several flashes of light appeared on the jade table and several storage pouches appeared on the table. Each storage pouch contained 5 high-grade spirit stones. Dong Laozu also seemed to be prepared for this phenomenon, and from his body, he took out several jade slips, and each jade slip had a specific description of this set of inheritance. Tianqin Laozu carefully examined the jade slip with her divine sense, and said, 23 kinds of core forging pill recipes, only 6 of them are not in our sect, and 4 kinds of half-step core forging pill recipes, only 1 of them is not in our sect. But that core forging pill that can strengthen the body is interesting, but it is not considered a good body tempering pill. It can only be considered medium, but the body tempering pill is extremely rare, so it is worth bidding. Of course, this set of inheritance did not only contain the pill recipes that Jinling did not have, it also included some medicinal properties of spirit herbs, cultivation, collection, fire control techniques, alchemy experience, and other aspects. Every alchemy grandmaster must have their own unique side, for other alchemy grandmasters to learn from. This was the so-called stones from another mountain can polish jade principle. After Tianqin Laozu put down the jade slip in the auction hall, the price of this alchemy grandmaster's inheritance had already reached 630 spirit stones. Tianqin Laozu thought for a moment, and directly bid 700 high-grade spirit stones. Chapter 5:16. In the end, Tian Qin Laozu wasn't able to win the inheritance because the cultivators in the 40th room raised the price to 1,000 high-grade spirit stones. Tian Qin Laozu was dumbfounded. He shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "With such a large amount of money, it's most likely the Heavenly Moon sect or the Yuan clan from the Middle Earth. No matter what, this inheritance is not worth such a price." After several auction items, a world spirit object that made second senior sister Li Xuanru's heart tremble finally appeared. The Azure Sea Jasper bead was a high-grade Earthstep water attribute world spirit object. The Azure Sea Jasper bead was also known as the Heart of the Ocean. It was a blue bead the size of a fist. The reason why the Azure Sea Jasper bead was called the Heart of the Ocean was that the cultivator who refined it would have a much higher cultivation speed than cultivators of the same level. Moreover, when a cultivator encountered an enemy, the cultivator would have an advantage in recovering their true essence. It was a type of world spirit object that could subdue enemies and was deeply loved by water attribute cultivators. Among the 7 cultivators sent by Jinling, Daoist Shen cultivated a wood attribute cultivation method, Li Xuanru cultivated a water attribute cultivation method, Daoist Xuanyu cultivated an ice attribute cultivation method, Daoist Shenbei cultivated a wind attribute cultivation method, Daoist Shenzhu cultivated a metal water dual attribute cultivation method, Daoist Shenhui cultivated a fire attribute cultivation method, and Daoist Xuansu cultivated an earth attribute cultivation method. The 7 cultivators who had reached the peak of the mid-core forging realm all practiced different types of cultivation methods. It was obvious that this was specially arranged by Jinling to avoid disputes within the sect for the same world spirit object during the auction. Strictly speaking, Daoist Shenzhu could have used the Azure Sea Jasper bead. Although it wasn't completely suitable, Daoist Shenzhu had competed for a mid-grade Earthstep world spirit object last time. This time, he couldn't compete with Daoist Li Xuanru. Tian Qin Laozu's expression constantly changed as he looked at the Azure Sea Jasper bead on the stand. Lu Ping was puzzled at first, but he immediately sensed something from Tian Qin Laozu's mocking smile. Second sister didn't want to ask Lyra Laozu for help. However, this time, Jinling had given all the treasures to Lyra Laozu. If second sister wanted to bid for this earth rank upper grade spiritual item, she had to lower her head to Lyra Laozu. Obviously, Lyra Laozu had already realized this situation. It depended on whether Li Xuanru wanted to save face or the Azure Sea Jasper Pearl. In the cultivation world, a high-grade earth-rank spiritual object could be considered a treasure that could only be encountered by luck and not sought for. When spiritual master Xian Sen saw this, he pondered for a moment. Just as he was about to speak, spiritual master Xian Su tugged at his sleeve. Spiritual master Xian Sen sighed softly, but he didn't say anything in the end. Dong Laozu still had a smile on his face as he continued, "The seller's request for this spiritual object is a little special. It's a fellow Daoist in the Transcendence realm who wants to establish a sect overseas. Unfortunately, his sect's foundation is shallow, so he wants to use this spiritual object to exchange for some pills that can quickly increase the cultivation of his disciples. Although the quality of the pills that the fellow Daoist wants is not high, the quantity is extremely large. Most of the pills are at the mid and late blood condensation realm and early core forging realm. Of course, everyone here is a discerning person. There's no need for me to explain the value of this Azure Sea Jasper Pearl. Just don't embarrass yourselves." As soon as Dong Laozu finished speaking, 7 to 8 storage pouches appeared on the jade table in front of him. 5 or 6 cultivators in the hall raised their hands to beckon the attendants to place the storage pouches on a wooden tray in front of Dong Laozu. The requirement to exchange for the Azure Sea Jasper Pearl was actually a little difficult. Perhaps many of the cultivators present had treasures and spirit stones that could match the value of this Azure Sea Jasper Pearl. However, they were all high-level cultivators in the cultivation world. How could they possibly have large amounts of pills that were only used by mid and late blood condensation realm and early core forging realm cultivators? Apart from the deep heritage of the various sects in the pavilions floating in mid-air, only a few alchemists or alchemy grandmasters hidden in the venue might have the ability to gather enough pills. Seeing Li Xuanru's somewhat unwilling expression, Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "This azure sea jasper pearl is very important to you, senior sister?" Li Xuanru bit her lip and said in a low voice, "To be honest, junior brother, master once said that with my talent, even if I can smelt a high-grade earth-level spiritual item, it will still take a lot of effort to condense a 7th-grade golden core. It will be even more difficult for me to break through to the Dharma stage. Only the Azure Sea Jasper Pearl can help me break through to the Dharma stage because it can shorten the cultivation process." Lu Ping smiled and said, "No matter what, the opportunity is right in front of you. How can you not give it a try? Maybe you can get it." Li Xuanru glanced at Tianqin Laozu behind her and said in a low voice, "How can I be willing to give up? Although I also have a few treasures that I obtained a long time ago, they are nothing compared to this Azure Sea Jasper Pearl, not to mention pills for the blood condensation stage." At this point, Reverend Li Xianru transmitted her voice again in a low voice. "That day, she captured Junior Marshal Brother Ian and the three of us without any explanation, but she was greatly humiliated by you. Now, she's probably waiting for us to bow our heads to her. If we really bow our heads to her, after we return to the sect, she doesn't need to brag about it herself. Everyone in the pavilion will report what happened at the auction to their respective masters. How can this matter be concealed in the sect? This person has many grievances with Master in the past, and her schemes are top-notch. How can she let go of such an opportunity to attack Master?" Although the people in the pavilions couldn't hear Li Xuanru's voice transmission, they could guess that it had something to do with Tianqin Laozu. Everyone sat quietly and didn't make a sound. However, Lu Ping said in a low voice, "Senior sister, that's not for sure. Who knows, maybe we'll be able to get this spiritual item." Although Lu Ping said in a low voice, he didn't use voice transmission. How could he hide his words from the people in the pavilions? A piercingly cold light flashed in Tianqin Laozu's eyes, but it was caught by Lu Ping's sharp divine sense. Li Xuanru immediately reacted. Her junior brother was a grandmaster alchemist. Thinking about the spirit water meridian nourishing pill that was regarded as a treasure by the sect, as well as the mysterious minor forging spirit pill, perhaps her junior brother really had a way. However, Li Xuanru still said in a serious tone, "Junior brother, it's fine if you don't want this vast ocean water avoiding pearl. I know you have a lot of treasures in your hands, but it's best if you don't reveal them. After all, you're only a mid-core forging cultivator. Even if you have the strength of a late-core forging cultivator, in the eyes of a true late-core forging cultivator, you're still not on the same level as them. This is what Master wanted to tell you in the past, but because you were too cautious on Huangli Island and Master was there to take care of you, he didn't warn you." Lu Ping didn't expect Master to give him such an evaluation. Lu Ping thought about what second senior sister had told him. He knew that this was Master's concern for him, so he nodded solemnly. However, Lu Ping immediately smiled. This time, if he really left Tianqin Laozu aside and bid for the vast ocean jade heart pearl, it would really be a slap to Tianqin Laozu's face. Lu Ping rummaged through the storage ring for a moment and deliberated for a while. Then, he placed a storage bag on the small teleportation array. In the pavilion, everyone except Tianqin Laozu was astonished. The storage bag disappeared on the small teleportation array activated by Lu Ping. Dong Laozu was checking the storage bags on the jade table one by one, and he reported the number of elixirs in each storage bag. However, Dong Laozu was still a little disappointed. The price of these items was comparable to a high-grade earth-rank spiritual item, but it was still too far from the expectations of his old friend who entrusted him to auction the vast ocean jade heart pearl. At this moment, the jade table next to Dong Laozu suddenly lit up with a ray of light again. Dong Laozu held the new storage bag in his hand in surprise. He scanned it with his divine sense, and the astonished expression on his face became even more obvious, which made the other cultivators who were bidding very curious. However, Dong Laozu's astonished expression was not because of the number of elixirs in the storage bag. On the contrary, it was because there were only a few kinds of elixir bottles and jade boxes in the storage bag. Every cultivator who participated in the auction took out a large number of elixirs. There were at least dozens of elixir bottles. Among them, there were many special elixirs that were specially used to raise a cultivator's cultivation level. However, these elixirs would have various side effects after consumption. Out of curiosity, Dong Laozu took out 5 jade bottles and 2 jade crystal boxes from the storage bag. Many of the cultivators in the auction house burst into laughter. How dare he take out such little things to show off? Dong Laozu calmly took out one of the jade bottles and an elixir. He carefully checked it, then put it back into the jade bottle and reported, 10 7-step marked elixirs. When the cultivators in the auction house heard Dong Laozu start to report the number of elixirs in a serious manner, the noisy auction house immediately quieted down. However, everyone understood that although the 7-step marked elixir was one of the best half-step core forging realm elixirs that could help condense the golden core, even if they filled up the other 5 jade bottles, they might not be able to compare to 1/10 of the vast ocean jade heart pearl. 10 enchanting thought elixirs. Although the enchanting thought elixirs were also good elixirs that could help condense the golden core, they were in fact inferior to the 7-step marked elixirs. 1 bottle of 3 jade spirit elixirs. Dong Laozu said indifferently after he opened the remaining 3 jade bottles. At this time, everyone's attention turned to the remaining 2 jade boxes. Everyone realized that the real mystery could only be solved by these 2 jade crystal boxes. In the pavilion, Tian Qin Laozu still did not say a word. Sage Xian Su, on the other hand, was a little nervous. He whispered to Lu Ping and asked, "Martial nephew Lu, are you really confident?" Sage Xian Sen was also a little nervous. If things went wrong, even Jinling's clean reputation would be tarnished. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Martial uncle, don't worry. At the very least, the items in the storage pouches that appeared on the jade table won't be much worse than the items in the storage pouches." Sage Xian Su heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Lu Ping's words. The items that appeared on the jade table were the bids from the various sects in the pavilion. Since Lu Ping said that they did not need to be inferior to them, at least Jinling would not lose face in front of the cultivators from the overseas region. However, Sage Xian Su was even more curious. What exactly was hidden in Lu Ping's 2 jade boxes that could be comparable to the dozens of elixir bottles from the other sects? This is, on the platform, Dong Laozu's eyes lit up and he said with some surprise, "You're tuning into the Passion Page's YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."